Welcome to the City Council meeting this evening on the 26th of April, 2022. We welcome you as our guests this evening and appreciate your participation. Hopefully some were able to make it earlier for the open house. The general plan land use map. I think we'll probably be having another. I talked with Scott. Probably need to get this on the calendar and on our website so that people know this is an important move in our city. So we want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity who would like to speak. So tonight we'll start our council meeting with Council Member Dalpass. Will give us an invocation, a pledge of allegiance, or a thought, whatever he has prepared. So, Councilmember Dalpass.
Great. I'm gonna do an invocation. Our Father in heaven, we're truly grateful that we get to gather here as residents and city council to discuss the needs of the city of North Ogden. We're truly grateful that we live in such a great place, and we ask that we'll be able to have a good spirit about us as we discuss all of these agenda items, and that we'll be able to come up with some good conclusions and some good ideas for the future of North Ogden. Please bless anyone that's in need right now, that they'll be able to be blessed in the ways that thou seest fit. We're so grateful for all that we have, and we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilman Dalpass. Before I forget to, I would like to excuse Councilmember Severing. He's with his in-laws down in Mexico celebrating his in-laws' 60th wedding anniversary. So, although we will find him when he comes back. We'll now enter into our consent agenda. Council, at this point in time, I would call for any conflict of interest that you feel may need to be disclosed. Starting the agenda. I do have a disclosure to make. I am an owner of the townhouse in Providence Point that my son lives in. So I've got a much better understanding of what goes on in that community. So I will declare that as a potential conflict, although I will be participating in the discussion. Anyone else? Okay, we'll move on to item number 3. I believe Dave Espinosa, the director of our Public Works Department, is with us. We have some conditional acceptances of some subdivisions this evening. So, Dave.
Thank you, council. Yeah, Dylan he's been off this week. He just had a brand new baby, so he's gonna be off this week. So he asked me to fill in for him. So the first one up is Major's Mini Farm, which is located at approximately 3075 North and 100 West. That one is, we are asking for conditional acceptance. All of the utilities have been installed, and we would like to start the 1-year period at this point. We will be holding we will be holding $11,259, which is about half of it is the 10%. And the other half is a light that will need to be installed before the 1-year warranty is up, a street light. Any other questions about that one? You want me to go through all 4 of them first, or do we want to go?
Unless you think there's one that's not going to be approved for any reason.
No, sir. That's all.
It's just not working. So.
I'm for efficiency, Dave.
Sorry
so
about that.
You can get through all 4 of them.
I can definitely get through all 4 of them.
All right.
Next up for conditional is North Oaks Cove, phase 15, at approximately 3625 and 800 East. This is the same thing. We're trying to take it into conditional for the 1-year warranty phase. This one we will hold $84,704, which 61,000 of that is the 10%.
May I declare another conflict? I'm building a home on that street.
Okay. Yes, sir, you are. So, and the rest of that is some sidewalk and other things that will be done before the 1-year warranty as well.
Should we double the holding, given who's building?
We might wanna think about it.
Kind of sketchy.
Next up is North Hampton Phase 8. This one, we're actually asking for final approval. All of the utilities have been done, and we are ready to take it over as the city for all of the infrastructure and roadway, as long as you guys vote for that to be finalized. And the last but not least is Pheasant Landing, which is approximately about 150 west and Loma View Drive. And this one is also asking for final. All the utilities have been done, all the roadways, everything's been inspected by Dylan and his team, and we are ready to take this one over as well for all of the infrastructure and roadways.
Council, do you have any questions for Dave on these issues? Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So that being the case, then all that are in favor of granting conditional and final approval for the subdivisions as outlined by Mr. Espinoza, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We'll move on now to item number 7 on the agenda, which is a discussion and action to consider approving the March 1st, 2022 City Council meeting minutes. Council members, do you have any corrections to the minutes?
I have something small. On page 24 of the packet, I believe it's page 4, it's during Brenda Ashdown's comments, there's a H that was not included, and it says, did not respond, does not care about her opinion or concern, instead of ER. So that needs to be corrected.
It's in the H.
Add an H. And then also, I believe it's also on March 1st is page 25. About 3/4 to the top of the page, there is a misspelling of PowerPoint. PowerPoint had an 8 included in it, and that just needs to be taken away.
All right. Any other corrections? On March 1st minutes. So with those corrections, I'd be looking for a motion to approve those minutes. We have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Exton. We have a second by Councilmember Swanson. Any further discussion? All in favor of approving the March 1st, 2022 City Council meeting minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We now move on to item number 8, which is a discussion or action to consider the March 22nd, 2022 City Council meeting minutes. Any corrections on those, Council?
I have something small. On page 34, about halfway down, it says the recommendation at the time was to delay action and needs to be fixed. And so to delay action, and action was capitalized. I think it just needs to be lowercase.
Okay, anything else? All right, with that correction, I'd be looking for a motion to approve the minutes of March 22nd City Council meeting. Have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Swanson,
Second.
second by Councilmember Dowpass. Is there any further discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Move on to item number 9 now. This is an action to consider a declaration related to our water situation. As many of you may have recalled, last year when secondary water was turned off early, we had concern about the use of culinary water in watering lawns. So we passed an emergency declaration identifying what culinary water could be used for. John's informed me that That declaration did expire at the end of the year. We are anticipating early shut off again this year. The declaration that was in the packet, I asked John to make one correction to that. This would be only in the event the secondary water is unavailable. So prior to that, we would be under the ordinances that are currently in the city to limit the use of culinary water. So John, do you have any additional comments on that?
Nope, just that language is highlighted here for the council.
Any additional comments, concerns? This item is just for discussion, I believe, this evening, John. I don't see anything on the agenda for action.
So it is on the consent agenda. The idea, if you remember, council, when we did these declarations, the mayor makes them and then the council gets to approve them. But it is typically expected to be a yes. So that's why we did it on the consent agenda.
So the mayor has made the recommendation for this declaration. So I guess it's, if the city council would like to accept it or they'd like to have further discussion, the time to consider.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we accept the declaration related to water as presented by you, our mayor.
Thank you for your support, Councilmember Swanson. Would anyone else like to lend support to that?
I shall lend my support as well.
Thank you, Councilmember Extra. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on this declaration? Seeing none, then, all in favor? Approving this, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Now I enter into the portion of our agenda that allows the community, or those who are here or online, John, if you would watch for us, to address the council with concerns they may have. I would just remind you to limit your comments to 5 minutes. And also if you would state your name and if you're a resident of North Ogden. So with that, we'll now open the meeting up for public comment.
Sandy Cochran, I'm a resident of North Ogden. So yesterday I looked at the agenda items and I saw that Village of Prominence Point was on the agenda. So I looked at the documents and oh my gosh, whoever had anything to do with this, thank you. We are, if everything works out the way it looks right now, we're extremely grateful. I've been coming here for over a year and you all have listened to me gripe and gripe and gripe. And as far as I know, at least not to my face, have any of you rolled your eyes at me. So thank you for listening. Whoever played a part in working on these plans with the new developers. I don't know if it was the mayor, the council, John Call. I have a feeling Scott Hess probably had a lot to do with it, but we are grateful. Having said that, I do have some questions I'd like to ask now so that when they have their discussion, maybe they can consider it at that time. And these are concerns that other members also of the community have had. We're wondering if the bankruptcy issue has completely gone away. And if we could get some history or background on the new developers. And if they would be willing to commit to some kind of time frame on getting all of this done. We've been watching junk pile up in these empty fields for 2 years, and it would be nice to know when we can expect that to go away. We'd also like to know when the previous developer will be relinquishing control of the HOA. And we'd like to ask the new developers to have the HOA books audited because some of us have concerns whether all the funds are still there or not. There were notations made in notes that we've seen that finances went out for legal fees. We don't know of any legal issues the HOA has had aside from the developer's personal issues. So And then, let's see. So there was an amendment made to our CC&Rs that said the developer could enter into an agreement with a third-party provider and sign on behalf of all the owners for certain services, particularly internet. And we're wondering if that could be addressed and if that situation could go away. I think maybe, oh, and also, so originally in the plans, the clubhouse had a pool, spa, and splash pad. And we're wondering if that is still the situation. I mean, we're grateful just to get a clubhouse and pool, but just to specify exactly what it's going to be. So thanks again.
Christina?
Watson, 1820 North 100 East. I didn't come prepared or anything, but you've inspired me. So I just wanted to say my 2 cents as well. I live right behind Prominence Point, and I don't have the same complaints because I don't live inside the development, but I think it's been a really nice development. It looks really beautiful on the outside, and I think it's definitely adding value to the area. Being in a single family home before this was all built and when it was all being discussed for years and years, I was really nervous, to tell you the truth. But for the most part, it's been great. But I do have a major concern, and I'm sure that this is probably way too late, but maybe there's an in now that all these changes are happening. If there is a way to move the 4-story independent living facility closer to Washington, that would be fantastic. If you have been there to this area, this is yeah. If you've been there, it's just a very strange place to put a really tall building. So that's my 2 cents.
Councilmember Swanson wants me to wave my wand. The proposal is to move the higher buildings closer to center.
I'm not perfect.
Yeah, I'm with you. I could never figure out how a 4-story building got right in the middle of a development. But I think the proposal is to move it.
Bear in mind that Eugenie only can fulfill 3 wishes, right?
Not here.
They want what for council?
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Christina. Don, is there anyone online that would like to comment?
We do. We have a Yaka Atwood.
Okay, let's hear from Yaka.
They'll just need to unmute themselves. There we go.
Greetings.
Oh,
Hello.
yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I just had and the question could be answered during that period. I was just wondering what the status it was. There's that little piece of land where the creek is, and my understanding is that had something to do with the Corps of Engineers, and if they could answer what plans are going to be done with that, or what any status is with that. Thank you.
Thank you. That will be the focus of the council's discussion this evening. Grant?
Grant Cross from North Ogden. I just want to take a second and apologize for missing the open house on the plan. Family exigencies take priority. Want to thank the council for their support in this endeavor, and just want to reinforce the fact that the plan, as our committee outlined it, provides great flexibility for the council in terms of maintaining open spaces, concentrating development, and really trying to maintain the nature of our community at the same time accommodating growth. And appreciate the council and their support, and look forward to seeing that adopted so that we can have the council use some great creative judgment. Thank you.
John, we have another comment online?
Now we have Corey Lynn Hightower.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. About Village at Prominence Point, I also have another question. Hopefully they could be addressed. Wondering why they're getting 12 more townhomes when they've only lost 3 lots. That's going to be put in front of Sandy's home instead of where the ILF was going to be. They're going to put 7 on the north side and 5 on the south side. I'm just wondering why they're getting more residents in here where we're so crammed in already and not any green space. Also, I was wondering if there's any more discussion about the dog park that they keep putting that across 1700 in the city's retention pond area, which I don't have a dog, but 1700 North, I don't think that's a good place for people to have to keep crossing to get to the dog park. And if the city's agreed with it or not, I haven't ever heard if the city's agreed to that. And I think Sandy and Yaka got my other questions. So, but very glad about the ILF going up on the east side. That's much more aesthetically pleasing instead of it in the middle of single homes. Thank you.
Thank you, Corlin, and that will be part of the discussion council will have with the developer tonight. Why should the city grant additional 12 lots? But I think there's some win-win situations we can talk about and work that out. Council might correct me here, but I think we have had discussion. The city does own that property, and last I heard it would not be a dog park. That's what I heard, so. Yeah, it's still on the Travis one, but that was the understanding I had, particularly where it drains into the creek. Okay, anybody else, John?
I'm online.
Anyone else here in the audience that would like to comment this evening? Okay, thank you very much for your comments. We'll now enter into item number 11 on our agenda. This will be led by Scott Hess, our planning director, who will actually be leading the discussion on the next 2 items. Let's start with a discussion to consider an encroachment request. Property located at approximately 3678 North, 600 East. And, Scott will lead the discussion on the village at Providence Point, and then he'll have 2 other items regarding follow-up from our meeting last council meeting in regards to zoning some property. So Scott, take over.
Apologize in advance for me being so many items. So it was brought to the city's attention that there was a property owner at Jonathan and Denise Keys that had constructed a shed at 3678 North, 600 East within an access road back to a detention basin. So it was under their understanding was that their property went up to the asphalt that was paved. The actual detention basin being 20 feet wide
Scott?
is.
John, that mic's not working. I'm not sure people can hear that are online.
I think the fixture's broken and it's gonna be a little.
Over here.
They can use mine.
Does this work over here?
Is this one here? I don't know.
Yeah, that one should
That
work.
one plugged in.
You can sit down.
Or they can
A
have
little more
it.
relaxing.
Thanks, Mayor.
But it's, I want to point out, it's also close.
Oh, that's true. Really official too.
All right. there you go.
Making himself right at home.
So like I was saying, it was brought to the city's attention that a shed was placed in a detention access road back to a detention basin by property owners, Jonathan and Denise Keys. The property owners were under the impression that their property went to the pavement there, and it's actually pulled back 4 to 5 feet. So by our estimate, and we haven't surveyed the property, approximately 4 or 5 feet of this shed, as well as some minor retaining and concrete pad are sitting in the detention basin access. Staff providing the staff report, kind of an outline of some of the contact that's been made with our building department, as well as code enforcement, and requests made by the property owner for John and I to meet on site and chat with them about it and see if there's any way that they could retain where the shed is, and maybe look at an exchange for maintenance of that detention basin access, and anything else they might need to do so that they don't restrict access back to that detention basin for future maintenance. But at this point, it's essentially an existing not approved use that wasn't approved through land use permit that we need to deal with. So if there's any questions, happy to field them, and I believe the property owner is online.
Council members, you have any questions for Mr. Hess regarding this issue? I think it was a nice write-up in the packet. Councilmember Swanson?
From the information in the staff report, it's not just that it crosses the access line, but it also doesn't fit any setbacks.
Yeah.
Right, this building would normally have to be 3 feet back from the property line within the owner's yard. Okay.
As well as show that I didn't pace off from the front of the shed. John, I think the next picture might show the other direction from looking from the front of it. So I'm standing basically on the sidewalk. I didn't pace off or measure to the front of that shed, but accessory buildings in North Ogden City have to be in the side or rear yard. So it have to be at least 30 feet back. That's the required front yard. And then enclosed by a fence and or landscaping or both. So should the council determine that this can stay, it actually needs to be enclosed in some way. You're kind of increasing the encroachment in some ways by allowing landscaping or something else to be planted around it to shield it, which is our standard accessory building requirement.
Other questions? Councilmember Galvez?
I can't tell exactly, but where is this shed in comparison to the home? It looks like it's pretty flush with the front of where the, is that
Yeah,
right?
it's in all likelihood, it's set at least 30 feet back from
Okay,
the sidewalk. So
okay,
yeah.
thank you.
And the property, as we estimate, the property pin and property line intersect somewhere in the black doors there of the shed. So it's running along that grass hillside and intersecting in, leaving about 4 feet or so of the shed in the detention basin access.
Mr. Call, did you have a comment?
The applicant is online, or the homeowner with their hand raised if the council.
Council, would you like to hear from the property owner? John?
Sure.
Let's go ahead and have John online, his comments.
Hey, council members. Yeah, we should have, we didn't realize that we would need a permit to do this building. And we went ahead and built this building. It's a small shed, but then we found out later that we were too close to the property lines. And so we've been maintaining that easement on the south side of the easement. We've been whacking down the weeds on both the south and the north side. And so, yeah, we've learned that we've encroached a bit there, but it doesn't appear that you can't get, it appears that you can get access to it with heavy machinery if you needed to. But we're just pleading our case that if we can keep our shed where it's at and we just continue to maintain it and then make the commitment that we won't park any vehicles on the easement itself. So that's kind of the ask there.
Any questions of the applicant? I see none. Councilman Barker, let's see what your comments are on this. Before we ask for a motion, let's go through the council, see where we're at.
I actually spoke with Dave Espinoza today and just make sure that, and he said there's no issues getting vehicles back there. My thoughts, I know we've got an email yesterday from a concerned neighbor that said if we allow this, then we're opening a door. But in my opinion, we've already opened the door before. We have a home in the Cove that's using the road just like that for their private driveway, but they can't park on it and they're going to maintain it. We have other spots where people use city property and they maintain it. My opinion on this one is once they found out they did something that they weren't supposed to, they tried to rectify it and they're trying to do everything they can to make it best for both sides. Like you said earlier, a win-win. I'd say let them keep their shed and maintain the weeds on both sides of the easement or whatever that thing's called, the road.
Councilman Swanson, do you have something you'd like to add?
I do. A little bit different take than Councilmember Barker. In the other instances, we didn't have a building that was placed on an easement. It was just use of an access road. This one, to me, is different in that, one, we have a building that was built on city property. It seems fairly obvious, like when I was over there looking at it, it seems fairly obvious that it should have seemed fairly obvious to anybody that where the back fence line is probably pretty close to the actual property line. Is that correct, Scott?
Yeah.
Otherwise, the fence would have been built out to the property line in the first place. So it seemed fairly obvious that the property line was where it is. And the other piece is, it's not just a matter of allowing encroachment or, use of an easement. It also negates all of the setbacks that we have for our accessory buildings. Because it's not just that it was built on city property and an easement is being used for personal use. It also completely ignores all of the setbacks that we have, that we've worked very hard to have for specific reasons. So I'm not in favor of granting the request for those reasons. But my mind can be changed.
Let's see if Councilmember Dalpaz or Councilmember Ekstrom can change your mind. Councilmember Ekstrom?
I hate to, everybody can make a mistake. I mean, which I understand, but when you start pouring concrete, that's generally, you got to ask permission before you start. You know what I mean? If it were just like, oh, they plopped up this lifetime shed and it's not a problem. You know what I mean? But they poured a concrete pad. So then it's like, they probably should have asked somebody about that before they put something that permanent down. It would be one thing, because it wouldn't be a problem. Like if they just put up the shed, they could just move it easily, but they didn't. So it's like a couple of things that they did. They actually constructed something without coming to a planning, didn't check. I mean, that was like kind of multiple mistakes. And so I think when we have a rule in place, we got to be really careful to make sure that we're not just like, well, it's just a suggestion, because then it kind of sets a precedent of, well, forgiveness is easier than permission. So I'm kind of leaning toward Councilman Swanson's perspective on it. But again, I could have my mind changed again. I feel for, because this is the kind of thing I might do. You know what I mean? So I do really feel for them, because it's like, if you don't know to ask, you wouldn't ask. But after sitting through so many things where we're trying to make reasonable rules for setbacks and things like that, we really are trying to be reasonable. But I don't know. What do you think, Katie?
I think there's two, before we go to JD, I think Councilman Barker pointed out two things. One, it's not the access that's the problem. We can get back there. I think Dave has indicated that they would be maintaining the weeds on the side, even though it's our property. I think you indicated you were staying short, but the other thing is, just like Councilman Barker said, well, we've already done this once, right? So then the next person says, well, we've already done this twice. The next person says, you've already done this 3 times. So that's the dilemma I'm faced with. I don't, in regards to access, I think Dave said we could get back there. It's just, that's the problem we have, right? Because Councilman Barker actually used that. We've already done this once. We may have done it more than once, I don't know. But Councilman Dalpas?
Change your minds.
I was I'm worried that it's essentially 7 feet off. So it's not only 4 feet off from the property line, but to Councilman Swanson's point, you know, it's essentially 3 more feet from that. So it's 7 feet off from where it should be. So it's substantially messed up. So I worry about that. And then the other thing that floats around in my mind, I'm not suggesting that Jonathan would do this by any means, but I mean, it's on North Ogden property. I think that it creates a little bit of a liability. What if someone messes up with their shed and it's not on their property and we get into a problem with that? So I don't think I'm supportive of an exception on this one.
Okay, any other comments? Councilman Barker, do you want to make any other comments?
This just goes back to what we talked about 2 weeks ago with our code enforcement and building permit hammer rule. Most of our residents don't know they need to get permits. Before I was on the council and before I learned all this stuff, I may or may not have put up a shed in the wrong place. I don't live in that house anymore, so you can't come check to see if it's there.
I think that's.
But that's my concern, is there's a lot of our residents that don't have any desire to come to city council or planning commission meetings or be involved in politics. And when they make mistakes, I'm willing to work with people that are trying to live their lives.
I think the point of education is important.
Mhm.
I don't know how to get the word out, but yeah, I was somewhat surprised on the number of things you need a building permit for. And I may or may not have. I don't have a shed, but probably got something else that's in non-compliance, but I guess this was brought to our attention by a neighbor that's concerned. Received an email, but let's go ahead and take a vote on this. We have a motion to grant a variance. We have a motion.
I would make the motion to grant the variance.
Do we have a second to the motion? Motion dies on lack of a second.
We all need one in our term, right?
All right.
If it's only one.
So, Mr. Hess, I guess you'll proceed appropriately. And, I do think that you probably have a number of issues that our citizens don't understand. So somehow, I don't know if it's in the Connection magazine or whatever it is, but it would seem we need to get as much education out as we can, because it's better to prevent than cure, right?
Mayor, there is an article about land use permits and when they're required. It's running in the Connection magazine this month, and it has been a recurring at least once a year article that Brandon Bell has put together. So it ran, I've been here since May, so it ran around May or early June last year, and it is running this month. Is it in the current Connection magazine or is it in the upcoming?
It'll be in the May, so the one that'll be coming to people's doors, it'll be.
Yeah. So that's when we do try to do that. I mean, it's once a year, so you have to catch people on the right month, basically, if they read it, but we're open to any other suggestions for getting the word out on those.
Mayor, may I speak to this too also? One of the things that kind of sways my opinion a little bit is the fact that it's causing a problem between neighbors. You know, it's like his neighbor is telling us about it. So, you know, I'm always trying to find ways to let neighbors work it out amongst themselves and not have to step in. But if we have to step in, then we have to enforce the rule, I guess, that we do actually have there. Otherwise, I'm like, I kind of am like the mom was like, don't make me come down there. You know? So it's, you know, we're trying to keep peace, and the way to keep peace, I think, is to be consistent as best we can. You know, as we know as parents, it's very hard.
And you've heard me say before that I believe being fair, being firm, but being consistent. And I think when exceptions are made, we need to understand why the exception is being made so that it is applicable to others that are in the same situation. Because once you do make an exception, to me, if you're going to be consistent, then you have to apply that under the same rules going forward. So, all right, let's move on to item number 12. Scott, you're going to lead a discussion on the Village of Providence Point. Why don't you proceed?
Okay, great. So we have the applicants here with us today, Steve Davies and Greg Cronin. The city was approached by these two, having placed Village of Prominence Point, the remainder of the property there left to be developed under contract with the former current owner, actually. And then I'm not sure if this was transmitted over to the council and mayor today, but I did receive a letter, an email from the property owner that indicated they knew that this was happening. Had a few items, but basically that so long as no decisions are made in this meeting, that it's just a discussion around what future changes could happen and it doesn't affect the sale or the contract that's currently underway with Village of Prominence Point. They were in full support of the applicant coming forward and chatting with the city council. So the project as it's being proposed is up on the screen here. There's a few kind of key elements of changes here, and I'll highlight those. So there's an increase from 4 to 6 4-story buildings. So currently the development agreement had 4 total 4-story buildings. So there is a consolidation of the number of buildings. It's actually a reduction from 13 to 7 connected buildings, which produces on average additional open space to the development. And some of the parking is shared between surface parking and under building parking, but the actual parking number, the parking ratio itself is increased with this plan. And I don't have the percentage increase there. The applicant may be able to tell us, but I don't have it sitting right in front of me. And then some of the other key points that were talked about in the public comment section is that the independent living facility, which was formerly on the northwest island parcel surrounded by the cottages there, has been changed over to have the approved clubhouse footprint placed there. That clubhouse has some indoor amenities, some workout equipment, gym equipment, some concrete common area, landscaping, and then a pool with a spa. There is still the issue of the 3 lots on the west side. You know, the purchase of this property does come with the fact that those 3 lots don't become developable all of a sudden. We've asked the developer to address ways for those properties to, be under some other use, or maybe we replat that, we figure out what kind of cottage can be on there. The independent living facility, as far as I understand from the proposal, it doesn't exist as its own standalone use within the rest of the buildings. The rest of the project becomes for rent, and maybe there's some that is prioritized for 55 and older type of community, but it isn't a specific the first project was. And then otherwise you have, still a series of connected trails and green spaces. And we think that this developer staff is real supportive of this project. We think that this developer has the capacity to take the project over the finish line and really make it something that would be beneficial to the city and provide additional housing choice in the area, as well as just complete a long-standing project that we've kind of been waiting for some of those elements to come in. Lastly, there is, 2 additional pieces. The developer is proposing that there be 12 additional townhomes, so that's a net increase at minimum of 9 doors that you'd be adding, because you've got the 3 cottage lots that are effectively unbuildable due to the depth of the lot. So that's one point of discussion with the council, and then the other is that this would assume ownership also of those commercial pad sites and still isn't being presented as having a time limit for when those commercial pad sites would need to go vertical in order to have additional vertical housing units. So that's a hard sell. We're North Ogden is really a destination community. So when commercial is right for North Ogden, we get it. And we usually get really high quality, excellent tenants, but it can take time. So we'll see those pad sites build out over time, but there's no performance recommendation at this point that says X number of residential doors equals, this amount of square footage of commercial space that's developed. So with that, highlight, I don't know if John has anything else to say. Staff is supportive of the proposal. This, should the council provide comments in the positive to this, then it would come back as a development agreement amendment and then run through the standard development process that's outlined in the development agreement for what goes to planning commission, what comes in front of city council, and then move forward.
John, do you have anything to add?
I think the developer could confirm this, but I believe timing of when that development agreement would come back would likely be sometime in the next 45 days. And there's a pretty short timing on them to close, as well as you can tell from the original developer, there was a concern about changing the agreement if there's a chance he would still own it. So there might be a timing issue with the closing happening before the agreement, or some sort of a contingent agreement that would go into effect when the closing occurred, or something like that, depending on how the council wanted to approach it.
I think Mr. Barrett probably understands that we're not here to get his sale on board. We're here to make sure we have a quality development in the city. And that's the approach we will take to make sure that we have a quality development that is finished. There's no secret, since I've been the mayor, this has been the biggest point of contention in our city. And there's been many promises made that have not been fulfilled in that development. And so we're hoping, as we vet this new developer, which we will, that's one of the things we do in our city. We're slow learners, but we surely have learned that we will meet with the developer and vet out their financial ability to complete the project. I think there were some questions that were addressed in our open comments. I believe that the current agreement, John, is that before apartments are approved to be built, the clubhouses will be completed.
Yeah, that was one of the things we talked about.
That's one of the things the council's talked about. We'll get to you in just a sec, okay? But currently, that's where we're at, because those have been promised for some time. And so I think the last agreement we had, council, is that would be a condition of the clubhouses being built, an agreed upon time. So with that, I don't know if we want to hear at this point in time from the developer, address some of these questions, and then we'll let the council ask you questions at this time. Whoever's going to lead the discussion.
Great.
Greg, welcome to North Ogden.
Thank you very much. Excited to be here. I've enjoyed meeting with Scott and John and kind of going over a little history here. You know,
Yeah, go ahead and sit, you can sit down.
did they want to hear me is what I was wondering. Oh, gosh, you got a nameplate for me? Please don't give me the one that just lost the campaign. I don't need this. I've already done this a couple times. Now, but thank you for having us. I'm here representing UBA, which is Unified Business Alliance, who had partnered with Davies Design Build, that you may have heard from a lot of the top end custom homes in the area, Parade Homes, all that, as a 40-year contractor who has been around the Utah area for a long time. UBA has brought capital, and we've enhanced that company to where it is well funded. There are 7 organizations under it, from the concrete providers, structural, vertical, the developers that do the land work, all of the underground utilities, everything are installed, all in-house. We're talking about a company that is currently, it's a Utah-based company that is looking to build what we would consider better communities. That's kind of our focus, is how do we go from boxes for people to communities, because we know that we have a lot more people that are going to live closer together. But how can we enhance community when they are living close together rather than in your traditional apartments? So how do we create that type of a feel? And so it was a little bit of attractive to this development, was that it already had some townhouses, already had the idea of a mixed use of housing types, had some amenities that were in it. So it was kind of an attractive project that was underway that we were familiar with. And so with that, took a good look at it. And, of course, the gentleman selling it wants to get quite a bit for his property. He considers it completely entitled, and that it is worth a lot more because y'all already approved them to have so many units. And so we're buying something that's already got permissions. So it's rather expensive to enter into that type of an arrangement. And so I just say that as a foundation. The approach that I might share is, thank you for the introduction. I think it was very accurate, Scott. Thank you. And John, is that there are some questions that were asked, and there are ones that were asked as well by the council. So if there's any that I miss, one was a background a little bit. The property, somebody asked about background of bankruptcy and stuff. The property is basically in that situation. We've worked with the owner. We have permissions from everyone to dissolve that bankruptcy and to be on a new slate with this arrangement, which has required us to do a little more investing in it than we would have intended. But we've taken on some other problematic situations to remedy them as a part of this acquisition. So we've invested a little bit more than we normally would. I think that goes to the last question where you're asking, we've asked, it's kind of been a mutual discussion about how to make up some of that difference for the win-win. And that is if we can locate some townhouses rather than that big independent living facility in that back area that was slated to have 60 units. We're now downing it to 12. And we're putting more of a clubhouse and an area for recreation for homeowners and everything back there. So we've kind of redesigned that whole back quadrant to be more of a community area. And so we worked out that we could absorb some of that impact that we're going to have to go through by picking up a few more units in the front where the apartments and all are. And by going up just one more floor and a couple buildings, we can absorb essentially the back independent living facility. Its entitlements, the actual units that were supposed to go back there, we're pulling those up to the front. And we designed quite well, I think, a way to do that and still preserve not only open space, but increase the open space by a small percentage, as well as we've increased parking to accommodate that by going under 2 of those buildings with 80 parking spots. So we take it off the surface and we put it underneath. There's a reason behind that. This covers another one of the questions, is that we talked about mainly for the council, how the independent living would go away. It's really not going away. We're actually modernizing it. If we put those 80 stalls underneath and we provide elevator access to that 4-story building and we build out those units for seniors, they've actually now got covered parking. They've got elevators to all floors, and we can accommodate not only the 60 that were back there, but we'll have 2 48-unit buildings that can be used. So if it were exceeding demand, we could move to the other building and have more than 60 available if that were the market. Otherwise, it will be professionals who want underground parking and want to use that space as well. So we've kind of multi-purposed those buildings so that they're now more flexible for uses. But we predominantly think that'll be used by people, that would like to have that convenience of underground parking and that elevator access to everything. And so we think that's going to actually, thank you so much. Appreciate that. So that is so I hope that covers a little bit of the independent living. We're not leaving the concept. We're actually embracing the concept. We're just improving upon it. We're also able to move the green space around a little bit and get green space closer to some of the actual buildings where you've got a more significant usable green space. It's one thing to have green space that's 20-foot strips scattered everywhere. And then there's green space you can actually use that actually becomes useful for the community. And so if you can't get out and throw a baseball with your kid or throw a football and you have a lot of green space, but it's not consolidated enough to have kids go out and play satellite baseball or kick a soccer ball, you really don't have anything. You just have green grass to cut. And we don't even need unusable green grass out here. We need hardscapes. So we'll try to do hardscape everywhere we can with the collaboration with the council. I mean, with your planning department, we'll put hardscapes where we can, prevent water use, but then keep us enough green open for the usability of the children and the families that will all be there. So that's one of our concepts we kind of look at. So I covered the background on that. I think I've covered the developer background. Right now, the last equity fund that was $110 million that were raised. This project's going to be somewhere between 20 to 24 million to get started again. And then we'll be putting, millions of dollars into this project. But we have approximately 2,200 units that are on paper to be built throughout Utah. So this is where it's a big project. It's not it's not something we're accustomed to as far as the company itself. So hope that gives you a little comfort as to the abilities of the company to pull the project together and to execute it. The other thing is timeliness is very important. That's one of the reasons we're here before we actually acquire the property. We don't want to be held up in a city. As much as you're going to vet us, which we want, we also want to vet the city, that we're not going to be sitting behind something we think we're getting. And then we're taking a year to get approvals to move on forward with some of these changes that we've all discussed. So we need to see that there's a kind of, for lack of better words, there's a good marriage going on between the city and the developer. If we're going to actually rescue this and move it forward quickly, then we can't be held up. We have a lot of people waiting to get this project done and move to other communities. So it's not our lifelong dream to stay here and see this to fruition as our keystone project of our lives. It's ours to make an impact on a community so that we can then turn around and do that in another community as well. So we want to do this more than just one place. So I hope that gives you a little better idea there. There was one that was the pool splash pad, I think was a question that came up. We've just discussed how what we're looking to do, we know that everybody wants the clubhouse. I get it. I mean, it's part of the turmoil that's going on, is that it wasn't built when it was supposed to be built. What we're willing to work with, and we've talked with Scott and John, is we're willing to move one of the clubhouses up to the very front of our line, which would be back in the, if you're looking at this, the clubhouse, the one that we're looking at right now would be the one, let's see, let me get it right. Here it is. This new clubhouse that would go from up there to back here. Is that, you see that, for those that want to see, is that we'd be taking this 4-story building area and we'd be looking at getting these townhouses in this clubhouse put in this back area to try to give some closure to that. But that would allow a clubhouse for all the residents that have already been built to start using. And so that would get that one moving towards the front end. And then we would work with the city on an agreement as to when the one that would go up here with the apartments, which will be a little bit larger for the quantity of apartments, but that would come in a certain phase based on what the city agrees and what the staff agrees and what you agree to. We would bring that one on board as we build out the apartments, but then we would open a substantial enough clubhouse to sustain what's there right now to try to bring that closure to that first part. So, these two right here, talking about green space, this was the plan that you had on the books. And I wanted the city council to understand, we're not moving any streets that are already down. We're not moving inlets. We're not changing the plan as far as where all the sewer and utilities are going to go around the property. We're taking the existing buildings, which there were 25 of them total, or 26 with the two clubhouses, or 26 structures. And we're changing that from 26, I think, down to 16. But you can see how the green space is just rearranged. There's actually more in the new plan, but you see how there's larger spaces that can be put to use and they're just moved around. Does that kind of give you an idea? That kind of gives you, you have all these buildings that give you little green spaces scattered around. And you've got this one that gives you much more of a community usable spaces where people can have natural gatherings and other things if they don't want to. So what's that? Well, yeah, and dog park was, I'll cover that. No, we all agree we don't want the dog park over necessarily crossing. The thing is, in our experience, when we plan communities, it would never get used except by a few people. Okay, I mean, dog parks are usually smaller dogs. I mean, you might put an area over there for big dogs to run around if you wanted to, but most people who are gonna live in these types of developments are gonna have smaller in-house pets. They're gonna take them for walks around the neighborhood. And what we propose in our other developments that we look at is we actually go with like a small dog park where this little scratch line is, where you have some dog like areas where they can go and go to the bathroom, get cleaned up. But here we've got one that's tentatively located. There's one up here. There's one that's right here by these units. There's another one that is right here that services this area. And there's one right here at the bottom And so these are what you would call smaller. They do them in a lot of the higher end apartment places where they're smaller. But as you're walking the dog around the neighborhood, they can stop at one of the parks. But you can use it for its purpose of letting them run around a minute and use the bathroom. And then you can clean those areas. But you make them more accommodating to the use. And you make them where they're around the community a little bit better. And that way you don't have it out in the fields where all the kids are playing. You just have spots where they can go and try to use it responsibly. So that's the approach we have to pets. Pets are becoming much more popular today than ever. I mean, truthfully. So we have to provide for them if you want the right tenants in your complexes. I mean, we have to have something there. We covered the pool, the moving of the independent. They talked about the HOA. There's Steve Davies has a lot more work with HOAs over his lifetime that he knows there are things we can and can't do as developers. We have timelines of where we're part of it, timelines where we get out based on the tenants coming on board and how many vote and what they do. So this has been not only a sticky situation for everyone here in the community, it's also been a little sticky part of our overall transaction discussion. But we can't do a lot for what's already there. It's not really our context coming in with the new parts. But as we come in and we carry our weight as a developer for the portions of the HOA we can influence, we'll be taking it towards the directions you're hearing right now. But there's a lot tied up in legal contracts we didn't enter into. They're already out there between HOAs and such, that we will do our best to mitigate, mainly for the purpose that we're selling. You know, we're renting places for people to stay. We want them to enjoy it and come and do the things. We don't need something that's contentious that's creating a problem. So we'll do what we can as we go. But did you have anything else, Steve, you want to share?
You know, those legal contracts apparently were pretty unilateral because Mr. Barrett controls the HOA. And he's also the participant or his wife in the contracts. So those are unilateral and those have been a lot of complaints we've heard about. So what will Mr. Barrett's continued involvement be in this project?
Mr. Barrett's will not be. The contract that's being spoken about is the weighing primarily on the internet services. And on the contract that was put in place to provide internet services for all the units. We're aware of it, fully aware of it. We've talked about it, looked at it, but there will be no involvement whatsoever in the HOA voting or anything like that, or capability for any of that to be influenced anymore. So I think part of that's going to have to just play out as we get the structure put back in place. As far as the actual, situation, I had something else I was about to share on that, is we've got, oh, go ahead, what was the rest? You're about to ask a question. What were you about to ask?
Well, so Mr. Barrett and his wife will be the internet provider still under the agreement here, is my understanding, because in reading documents, he amended the agreement that even if the property is sold, he maintains the rights to that in November.
Yeah, and we will.
He did that document.
Yes, he did. And we will work with John Call and with staff to look kind of where we are on that as we go through. As I said, this has been a journey of getting to where we are to adopt this for everything we're sharing with you today. And so with all give and take, there's only a small, tiny part that, we've had to put into this. But the deal is that we also understand that internet providing and services have regulations and FCC rules. There's a lot of other things that go with that kind of stuff. So for lack of more time tonight, I just will allow the council to ask us as many questions more thoroughly about that at another time, as we get our further research done on where our obligations will be and what we will be able to do moving forward. That's probably the best I can share.
And we understand your journey, by the way.
Yeah.
Let me just say,
Come on up.
Steve Davies, we're basically on your side here because it's our people renting to. I think Greg made that comment. So we don't want our people to be in a bad position either. And so whatever we can do, given the arrangements that have already been made, we will. So we're not trying to take advantage of anything. We're just, as you know, it's been kind of a messed up deal, right? So we're facing the same thing you are, coming into the deal and trying to make it work.
I think one thing that would be good to disclose is that we have zero benefit from that contract. Like, we have not negotiated that we would have one dime from anything whatsoever to do with that contract. So that it stays 100% the HOA's ability at that point to make their decisions moving forward. So we have not adopted that position at all.
Yeah, we just know you want happy residents.
So
All right.
I can cover the last question if you'd like.
Go ahead.
I think the only thing I saw here was there was a question about the creek and the land. And there's some lots that I think we need to address. And there's some issues that were around that. I've learned a lot about it. I understand that we'll be assuming some lots that we cannot even build on and that we'll be acquiring them. I think that was part of the win-win discussion about the 12 units possibly, how we can just mitigate some of these additional pains by allowing us to do something that would not be noticed one bit in the entirety of the project, is to put them in the right places. But in that, we are open to working with the council on how to rearrange those 3 lots so that that pathway can go through at its appropriate time back there and not be impeded. And that we feel like that we've met with John and with Scott, and we feel like we can work with the council on kind of summarizing how that can work. That would be amenable to everyone, but we're aware of that. So we didn't want you to think that we were not personally noticing that we'll be doing that. We know that it will probably be some form of a park arrangement back there that's coming through. We know that we have 3 lots there today. We realize it may end up being that we have 2 or possibly only 1 lot available after we mitigate the area back there, or possibly none. So we just have to look into what the requirements are going to be to actually accommodate the path through there. And we know that there are other relationships that we're learning more with the council about that surround those 3 lots. And so we will be as open to listening and understanding how we can, mitigate that to where everyone gets the best outcome. But we are not expecting right now to build on those 3 lots in this, but we are purchasing them at the value they were sold to the previous person. So we are taking that on as a part of this contract. So I think that covers everybody that had asked questions, and I believe the ones you had asked. So if there's any other ones, Steve or I would be happy to entertain any other questions you might have right now. I do want to close with that time is of the essence. They mentioned it. We really don't want to get into we work with a lot of cities, all over the state. And it's a partnership between a developer and a city. And if the cities just don't move quickly, then we could be spending, a project this size is literally hundreds of thousands of dollars a week to a month. So 1 month is easily $100,000 gone that we get delayed. So once we close on this, we would just ask y'all to be as attentive as possible. And so far, it's been a wonderful experience. If that continues, I don't think we'll have any concerns that I can think of right now.
I think you'll find if we can come to a win-win agreement here that we can move quickly. We have no incentive to delay the project. In fact, we have much incentive to move along. But as with any partnership, as you referred to, it needs to be win-win. So I think, I think the big thing, and I'll let the council speak here, but I think the big thing on our mind is the use of those 3 lots and how those play into the agreement. So once we can figure that out, I think we can move quickly. But, that's going to be probably, but let me ask, I'll just start with Councilmember Swanson here, see if he has any additional questions.
I don't. I like what you've presented. Like it when I saw it in the packet. I like what I've heard in that packet.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. Councilman Dalpass, do you have any questions for the developer?
No, more of a comment. I think that you don't want to just have sprawling parking lots, but I think for this development, parking is kind of at a premium. So I'd like to understand how many more spaces are going to be made through these changes. And I don't know if it's possible, and I don't know if it even makes sense, but if those 3 unbuildable lots don't work out very well, could there be a strip of parking that goes along there as well? If it helps a parking ratio, so things aren't as cramped. That's just my only thought.
You want me to address the questions? Tell me or me to wait?
It was in there, but I think with the number of increased parking.
Yeah, I can give
spaces.
very specific answers. We did add parking spots back here where the club would be to provide guest parking as well as that. But our overall parking that was required, you were at essentially 1.9%, or excuse me, you were before at 1.98 units per parking stalls per unit. You're now at 2.09, so you're actually more parking stalls per unit with the new plan. And the strategic locations of those have actually enhanced the ability to park appropriately. And so those are things that we've done in this plan. And so the total parking units of the overall development, including what's already been built, is now at 2.17 per unit instead of the 2.07 there was before. So you have not only what was in the development agreement, but more right now for parking.
Councilmember Ekstrom, do you have any questions for the developer that haven't been answered?
No, I don't have any questions, but I want to thank you for purchasing this Gordian knot. I mean, reading over that development agreement just gave me a headache. And then when I would try and have any sort of conversation with the developer, I just felt like he was trying to evade his responsibilities and trying to get accommodations with no win-win. And I have a lot more confidence just in your plan. It makes sense to me. I like the redesign. I like your, I guess, approach to making larger open spaces so that, one of the things that we've got tonight also is the Century Farms where we have more, we've got smaller individual lots, but there's open space associated with it. So I really like that also. So, as long as we can come to, a win-win, and especially I think with the mayor and Sandy, we want happy people, and we also know how much demand there is. So we really want you to get going. We want you to get this built out. Another thing, it just helps with expectations. It's much easier to picture something that's already built. I have a hard time picturing just on this is not one of my talents. So when I can see a building that's all done, okay, I know exactly what I'm getting. So the quicker you can get it up, the better. And let's get going. Thanks.
Let me address that just a little bit. I think Greg mentioned that we're out over $20 million in the acquisition of this, and that's over $100,000 a month in interest. It's not in our best interest to dawdle around. So we want to get it in, we want to get it done and out. We, as a company, we're pushing 200 employees. We have 6 or 7 inside companies. As he mentioned, we do all of our own concrete work, we do all of our own excavation, we do all of our own steel fabrication. What else we do? We have
Our landscaping division, we have a full architecture division now. We have engineers inside.
So we got the capability of doing this. And
So you've got the crews. You're not going to be worried about trying to acquire subcontractors that are. Yes, okay. So we're on the same page. I appreciate that. Thank you for that reassurance.
We're not totally immune to supply chain issues, but as far as labor and people in-house to try to achieve it once we get the items, we're ready to go. I think you had one more. I had one other thought that came to mind. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask John something real quick. John, I don't believe, unless you tell me otherwise, this would have to go back to the planning commission because it's a development agreement that we have the right to amend.
That's correct.
So this wouldn't have to go back to the planning commission. So that's one step out of the process right there. So you heard me say earlier, though, I believe in consistency. And one of the things I'm very concerned about is we put more density, which obviously is the move, is that we need parks for those people. And in our recent development that we're going to talk about tonight, we asked the developer to put in that park. And even though we have open space, I'm just a believer, the more people you cram into an area, even though they're very good people, frustration takes place and they need a place to go. So in my mind, and I don't have a vote, but I'm thinking our discussion needs to center on those 3 lots being a park.
I think that's our intention.
Yeah.
That's where we're going
That's-
right now.
Yeah, that's where we need to
That's-
work out how that's gonna
Yeah,
happen. So,
that's definitely our direction.
okay. Councilman Barker, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Nope, looks good to me.
All right.
Move
One other
forward.
thing in terms of parks, the dog, what was the dog run? I think we inherited in there, that's gonna be grass and sprinkled.
Why don't y'all take that over?
Yeah, I think, isn't that city property, John?
We want y'all to have that as a park. We'll do the other parks. Y'all take care of that one. But no.
Yeah, I think that proposed dog park is on city property.
I want to get that one up there moved for what we need to do.
It drains into the creek. And as you know, one of the big issues we've been facing is the preservation of that creek.
And I
so-
will mention,
But that's something that I think we need to make sure we're having a discussion on. Sure.
since I have all of you here tonight, that topic about that area over there, we would really appreciate that to be the cities. I mean, it's not really integral. You know, we've actually got it as a plus on ours to add to it to make landscape bigger. We don't need it. It really has nothing to do with our overall plan. We just inherited it. So we don't mind giving up the 3 lots back there and what we paid for and everything else. But that'll be something we'll talk about. It'll come back to you. We can get through. The commercial area I wanted to address because that was not talked about, except it was mentioned that y'all are looking for some commercial, that it fills up nicely, keeps jobs, does stuff. Would you like to talk to our commercial part of our division for what we are?
I'm not sure we're really firm about what type of product.
Well, just as a company, I mean, we're not an apartment housing complex building company only. We have approximately, I don't know how many thousands of square feet of commercial under construction right now.
Yeah.
But we've done very large commercial stuff, and we really want the commercial to go in because it supports the whole portfolio as part of our plan. It's not about waiting on it. It's about putting it in as we get it designed and ready, not necessarily delaying it till after the apartments. It's just, we got to tackle one at a time. But as soon as we get the planning done, we'll deploy, construction in both areas at the same time. It's not that we'll be waiting.
Housing units supports commercial, obviously. As these housing units go in, we'll do that. But we've got currently about 600,000 square feet of commercial and retail on our books that we've purchased probably for in this building. And I think you mentioned with this, 2,000, I think we're actually have about 3,000.
28 something.
28.
This will make over 30.
Yeah, this will push us a little over 3,000. housing units.
Perfect.
We have on the books.
Well, I thought you mentioned commercial, we just didn't touch it, so I was gonna share that with you. But that's our thought on commercial moving forward.
And we're also aware that you want something a little nicer in there. We don't want to fight over a 7-Eleven on the corner.
Yeah, our commercial will be nice and office type or something that would be sustainable for a while. This is a long time adventure, not selling.
The car wash is already taken up, so. it's-
Well, it is.
Like I said, we haven't planned that entirely, but one of the things we've talked about is some commercial retail on the bottom, and a couple 3 floors of office space above or something like that. We do a lot of office space.
Perfect. All right, well, we'll look forward to getting together and working out the details. I think we like the amendments, moving the buildings. And I think we'll find the residents will be happy.
And our engineer lives right across the street, is that right? He's excited to get it done.
Yeah.
Brings a new concept to homework.
Yeah, he'll be continuing. By the way, he'll continue as our engineer, basically civil wise over here. So we're gonna keep that continuity with your town affairs. He'll be across the street to check on things. So if you have a problem, go tell him to go over and fix it.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time. Thanks for joining us tonight. All right. Let's move on to our next item here. Scott, I think you're going to lead us in the discussion on this. This is kind of a follow-up, I think, from our last meeting. I think council were pretty much aware of, we postponed this to this meeting. So I think we're up to date, Scott. So let's go ahead with that. Next two items, Scott.
Okay, thank you. So the item in front for consideration right now is the legislative amendment to consider adopting the Century Farm zone itself. It's in the staff report, it's called a planned residential unit development, but it's actually more like a modified residential R15 zone. It's a standalone. It is not a PRUD in the way that our zoning code calls out planned residential unit developments and their requirements for HOA amenities and other open spaces and things. So this is a standalone development agreement that we've talked about for the project itself, but the zoning code essentially allows the project as reviewed and provided really a kind of a nod of approval to, and has received preliminary plat approval for the small lot, single family development. So I won't go through it in detail, but this is a follow-on item from 2 weeks ago where we realized that we hadn't posted both the zoning text amendment as well as the rezone itself for completion to rezone the property to that Century Farm. We do have the applicant in the audience if there are any questions.
Council, do you have any questions that weren't answered last time? Councilmember Ekstrom, do you have?
No, I'm just, if we look at the wording and everything, it all work out to the approval, I guess, of both parties. The city's happy with it, the developer's happy with it. My one question is also, is this a reusable zone? I love this concept, right? I would love to be able to put, Century Farms, especially even the name of it, Century Farms. A lot of it is like, we've had farms here for centuries and now we're growing families on them. So it's like, putting them maybe a little closer together, but with a park with them. And I love it.
I think, yeah, that's a great question. I think that it's probably worth the planning commission and the council talking about, is there a future R14 zone, or is R15, should it have some provisions for smaller lots depending on some upgraded amenities or something? This one is sort of specific because you have some call outs on street side yards that are specific to lot numbers, which we do have in other zones like quail ponds. But we could amend this in the future too, and it would be, pull that provision out because the house is already existing.
Kind of a template.
Lot, yeah, so use it as a template essentially.
Okay, awesome.
It's a great try for, we worked really well with the developer to come up with something that I think is a win-win for the city. And this would be an attempt at a new type of development that we really don't have, short of the kind of the patio homes that are on the 5,000 square foot lots. But these are really geared towards, as far as I can tell, the product is geared toward first families, or maybe the first family buying into a single family home. No homeowners associations, no other added additional overhead costs, just you're a homeowner on a smaller piece of property with all those other rights and everything that you'd have outside of any other homeowners.
Yeah, Councilmember Ekstrom, I think, this has been developed, as you recall, the first approach on this was townhomes. We've been out, several of us have looked at this particular product. And I would think if this works, which I'm hoping it does, because I think it's a new variety of housing in our community that gives us a balance, then I think we could surely look at, making this a zone that would be usable in other areas. But I think it's prudent to see how this turns out first, kind of put your toe in the water. But I think, we're planning on this being a good quality development, as we do know where the developer lives. So anyways, any other questions on this? This would be an ordinance 2022-08. Any further questions, council? If not, I would be looking for a motion to approve ordinance 2022-08 related to the zoning text amendment that Scott has discussed. Have a motion.
Mayor, I move that we adopt ordinance 2022-08 as outlined.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Barker. Is there any further discussion? Now we'll take a roll call vote on this. Councilmember Dalpas.
Yes.
Councilmember Ekstrom.
Yes.
Councilmember Barker.
Yes.
Councilmember Swanson.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Scott will now move on to what we classify ordinance 2022-09. This is a discussion or action to consider rezoning the land located at approximately 281 East Pleasant View Drive to fit into the motion we just passed creating the zone.
Thank you. So this was the piece that was missing last week was we talked about the zoning text amendment, but hadn't brought back this 1-year-old zoning map amendment. So the zoning map amendment will rezone all of the property pursuant to the Shaw Century Farm subdivision approved preliminary plat, with the exception of lots 35 and 36, which will remain in the residential RE20. So if you look at the red line is outlined here on the ordinance itself, this is the area that would be Century Farm Zone, small lot, single family. However, based on the configuration of the parcel, and as John Hanson said, you wish all properties were square. There's this one area left with two, what I think will be really nice half-acre pieces of property in the city that kind of blend this idea of, you know, new type of housing, small lot, single family, with some of the older, more open space farm field pieces of property out there. But because those were specifically held at 20,000 square feet plus one at minimum, those have different rules and regulations under RE20 for animal keeping and other provisions that they can have based on the size of their yard and the fact that their underlying zoning is currently that agricultural RE20. So they'd like to preserve that. So that's the only kind of specific item I'd like to say here on the preliminary plat and how it relates to the rezone as opposed to the original application.
Council, do you have any questions for Scott before we pursue a motion? Get a motion then to approve ordinance 2022-09, which would be to rezone this land located at approximately 281 East Pleasant View Drive.
Mayor, I'll move that we approve ordinance 2022-09 rezoning land located at approximately 281 East Pleasant View Drive to the Century Farm zone.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Dowpaz. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll also take a roll call vote on this. Councilmember Swanson,
Yes.
Councilmember Dowpaz,
Yes.
Councilmember Ekstrom,
Yes.
Councilmember Barker.
Yes.
Thank you very much. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you, and we'll look forward to a very nice and exciting development in our city. We'll now move on then to a presentation made by John Call, our city manager and an attorney. He's going to discuss an action to consider an ordinance related to firework regulations. John will explain why we have to do this in a timely manner. John?
Thank you, Mayor. So we have to adopt our fireworks map before May 1st of every year. It doesn't mean we can't do additional restrictions on fireworks in the future or after the date. We just have to have a map that says where they're banned, where they aren't, so we can get it to the state. This is the map provided by the Northview Fire District. I believe if there are questions, the fire marshal might have some answers for some of those, but this is essentially the same map we've utilized for the past several years with no significant changes.
John, just a question. It seems like we got a little bit of a bind last year when we did make the decision to prohibit fireworks in the city, because they said the map had to indicate that. You could always go back and change it, but if you wanted to actually ban fireworks, which I'm not saying we will, but that had to be in the map that was submitted. But I would defer to Fire Marshal Barker on that particular question, but it seems like that was a debate that took place last year.
So I wouldn't say that. Our legislator, they changed the rules yearly. And in the last couple of years, I'm not sure which one, they said to do firework bans, you have to adopt a map with historical hazards May 1st. And so this is what we're complying with. That statute says by May 1st, here's our historical hazards. Now, as we get closer to fireworks season, It is still too soon to ban fireworks citywide, because I've been told by the state, one of the state fire wardens, we're in, I can't remember this weather pattern, where it's called La Nina, El Nina, something. There's a 50-50 shot we're gonna have a wet June. So if we have a wet June, you won't ban fireworks. If we have a dry June, might ban more fireworks, but we don't know yet.
Sounds like a weather forecast.
Yeah.
50% right or wrong.
At least he said 50-50. Usually it's a lot more or less, but so we're following the state law says by May 1st, we're passing our historical hazards, and that's our historical hazards.
There you go. Any questions on that map? This would be ordinance 2022-10. So do we have a motion to adopt this ordinance as presented here at council meeting tonight in regards to fireworks regulation? We have a motion.
You want me to pass my own ordinance?
Yep.
Okay, Mayor?
You have a conflict of interest?
No. This comes from above me too at the fire district, so.
I'm still looking for a motion to.
I'll make the motion that we pass ordinance 2022-10. But the firework ordinance.
Okay, the map, thank you. And second by Councilmember Swanson. Is there any further discussion? Councilmember Barker,
Yes.
Councilmember Ekstrom,
Yes.
Councilmember Dalpence,
Yes.
and Councilmember Swanson.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. We'll now move on to the long-awaited presentation of the budgets. And we're going to start with Mr. Call, who's going to present the council and legislative budget within his allotted time, 15 minutes max. So that's seconds. Well, John is an attorney, so we gave him 15 minutes. John?
Okay, thank you, Mayor. This is your budget, council. You probably didn't realize that you actually have your own department. We are not recommending any changes for you this year, because it's pretty much fairly standard stuff for your group. Wages and benefits, that's something that the council is given a stipend every year, and the mayor as well. And that is set by the council. So that has gone up or down a little bit in my 10 years with the city, based on the situations that we've had and the various leadership. But that's one of the biggest, it's the biggest portion. There is, as you can see at the top, a 28,241 administrative fee offset. That is money that's compensated by the enterprise funds to cover your salaries and benefits and the other overhead expenses, because you are the governing board for those enterprise companies, for lack of a better word. So it's a way to make sure that they're contributing their fair share of this department's costs. The 12,500 that we pay to League of Cities and Towns is based on population. I believe every city in the state contributes except for one to the league. And as you know, the training budget actually ties into those league trainings. There is a question about whether or not that travel and training budget will be enough. Because it can be expensive if the council went to all the trainings that were offered. But we do find ways, there are trainings that we can do for free as well, if the council would like to. The 5,000 in public hearing notices is, we don't always use that money, but we like it there just in case. We also will use that for open house food and things like that, that are council policies. And then the stipend for iPads and cell phones, the mayor does have a city cell phone that's covered under that amount. And then usually this budget is higher. Every other year it's higher. When it's an election year, it's higher because we need to pay the county to administer our election. And you can see that this year, I believe we had taken out $28,000, although in reality, I believe our expense was closer to 35 for last year, because we didn't have as many county-wide discussions. And so the way the county works it is if there's just a city election, we pay the full cost. If there's a city and a county election, then we split the cost. Well, it's, can't say county election, but a county bond. And if there's other things that are being voted on, then it would be divided into 3 pieces. I think every other election cycle, we end up paired up and we end up splitting it 3 ways. But this last time we just did it 2 ways on the general election. So that's your budget.
John, may I just, for the public's knowledge and to be totally transparent, each council member receives a $500 a month stipend, and the mayor receives $1,000 stipend. Generally, that breaks the law because it doesn't meet minimum wage standards for the work that's put in, but I just wanted the public to know that that's what the council is paid. I'm not aware of any increases that have been made or proposed, nor do I propose one. I think many of the cities in our area have proposed increases in that, but I think that what I've seen is the elected officials in the city are more interested in serving than getting compensation. So I just wanted to point that out, that is the compensation received by council members and the mayor. Do you have any, John, and you say this is in comparison to last year, the only real change is the election amount?
That's correct.
So the council is not asking for an increase in allocation of funds. Is that a correct statement, John?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Council, do you have any questions? Councilmember Ekstrom, go ahead.
Yes, this was my first, we just came back from our League of Cities and Towns mid-year conference, and I found that to be so incredibly helpful. I mean, if I'm going to propose anything, it would just be to make sure that travel and training is adequate so that we can actually attend these things, because I really felt that was really helpful. I mean, we hadn't been able to do it for a couple of years because of COVID, and I was like, wow, I wish I'd known this right from the start. So that's, and again, I think because, and I think I speak for all of us, we are here not because we're getting so greatly compensated. The mayor, I think, really is working under minimum wage for how much time and effort he puts in. And his expertise, it's really amazing. And it's kind of like, well, anything that if we actually paid for the expertise that we're getting, it would be way more. So I'm just very grateful for that attitude, but I would want to make sure that in this specific role that we're all in, that we are the best trained we can be to do our jobs well. So that's the only thing that I would say. If as we go along, if there are opportunities for us to take it, maybe we do a budget amendment if we can't predict it very well, to get these trainings in. I don't know. Anybody else feel the same way?
Councilmember Barker has a comment.
Not to be on the opposite side, but we do have city staff that have cut their training budget. So I hate to take more training for us if our staff has to cut some. So
I don't believe in cutting their budget for training either. So.
Yeah.
Any other comments? John, well done. Thank you for that presentation. We'll now move
Took
on
about
to
10
the
minutes.
planning and building department budget. And just as a reminder, I've asked the council members to team up with the department heads, because I think that gets more involvement and the council members understand what we're talking about more so. So Councilmember Dalpat, you want to step down here to help Mr. Hess with the budget presentation?
Yeah, sure. More comfortable standing, honestly, but maybe you won't be able to hear it as well. Yeah, so I am the liaison to both the building and planning departments, and so looking forward to this chance to present on the budget. Go ahead and move forward. I think it skipped over the second one with the department overview. I think it's, I'm showing it's as hidden. I think you might have to go back to the slide and unhide it.
Oh, it's showing up. Okay.
Yeah, because on my phone, it's showing it's hidden as well.
Oh, yep, it is. There we go.
Great, thank you. So what some people might not know is that John Call is actually our building official. He wears many hats in the city, and that's one of his responsibilities. And within the building department, we have Colleen Phillips, who's one of our administrative assistants that helps a lot with building permits and such things. Bruce Higley is one of our building inspectors. Nate Davis is also a building inspector. And then we have built into the budget a new hire that is coming soon. And I'd just like to point out, because I did have this question when I was talking to John and to Scott, is that this new hire really will be essential for a lot of the new growth that's coming. If you think of all the large approvals that we already have under our belt, such as Cooperstown, Patriot Point, and actually in-house the public safety building, there is going to be a lot of additional work there. And this person most likely will be able to shadow some of our more experienced building inspectors. And so I think it will be a great opportunity to bring someone on. So anyways, also we have the planning department with Scott Hess, our fearless planning director that's by my side here. And some people may know that we have Kai Johnson and Brandon Bell. So Kai, he actually splits half of his time with the building department and half of his time with the planning department. And Brandon is our associate planner. So go ahead. So we have a question by Councilwoman Ekstrom.
All right. This is just as a concern, and as far as labor shortage go, I know Ogden City is desperate for planners. Are we competitive? Can we get somebody? Scott, have you, for the inspector? Have we put out actually,
I think we are competitive.
okay,
I think that what we've budgeted is a good range for what we hope to be able to get. That being said, this is one of the positions in the city that has seen some of the most aggressive growth. And we have done some, we've kept up with it it's one of those that we're watching. I pretty much look at it monthly for all the building inspectors, but we should be able to hire someone in this position for what we got budgeted.
okay, good. Scott, if you know any friends, we would love to have someone like you.
Awesome. Okay, thank you for the question. So the building department has a budget this year of $486,000. And this percentage that is allocated towards salary, wages, and benefits is similar to many of our departments. So it's a high percentage. So about 91% of the budget is allocated towards salary, wages, and benefits for our awesome employees. 5% of the building budget is for business-related costs. 2% is for the motor pool for the vehicles that participate in that program, and then 1% for professional services. On the planning side, it's a budget of $319,000. Similarly, 91% of those of that budget is towards wages and benefits. Business-related costs, 3%. Not applicable on the motor pool because if Scott wants to take a vehicle, he'll usually borrow one from a different department and return it nicely, gently used, right? Usually. Okay, yeah. He's only jumped a couple of train tracks, right? Yeah. And then 5% for professional services. And I'd just like to note that this professional service percentage is actually higher than it would usually be. And the reason that professional services is higher is we have $15,000 that's allocated in this budget to help with the grant that has been approved for for the North Ogden Plaza and the active transportation plan that is being worked on. So if you look at the amount that we got for that grant, which is, over $100,000, and we're allocating just $15,000 to go towards that, it's actually a really good thing for our buck. And then go ahead and move on. So as far as deliverables, some of the things that we find most important, one of the easiest things to track is the building department, because we have a goal to turn around building permits within 10 business days. So attaching a deliverable to that one is very easy. And I know that we've made a lot of steps and taken a lot of strides to be pretty well within that window in most situations. So you'll see that our main deliverables are quality customer service. So truly, we want to make sure that our residents get the full attention that's needed for whatever their situation is. We want to make sure that we're facilitating development and land use rights, make sure that there's consistent communications, quick turnaround. There are a lot of zoning decisions that will come through, and that's something that Scott and team is focused on, making sure that things are moved along as quickly as possible, but without, forgetting all the details and being really into the weeds and making sure that things are done right, and then land use permits. So that is building and planning budget kind of in a nutshell, and just wanted to see if you all have any questions.
I have a question that maybe John could answer. A lot of these expenses are for services performed and are charged, I believe, covered by building permits and things of that nature. In fact, John, I believe we recently received something from this state auditor now is basically saying that building departments basically just cover their costs. But I did want to point out to the public that, we do use funds from building permits, site plan review, those type of things. John, do you have the revenue there? I think Councilman Swanson may have it if you don't, the revenue that's collected to help offset some of these expenses.
So we actually, between building permits and plan check fees, there's about $800,000. And one thing that isn't calculated that I think with that request from the auditor that we'll be seeing in the future is there will be some overhead assigned to this department, like that admin transfer fee, to make it clear that those fees are helping to support things like Katie's role, my role, and others that where the salary isn't included here, but we provide support to that department. There are also some zoning and subdivision fees for $45,000. I think that's the fees that would essentially be dedicated to these departments.
So basically, it's a self-funding department. And I guess I would just ask Councilman Delpaz and Scott, with the anticipated growth and the hiring of this individual, do we think it'll still be self-sustaining on the projected revenues with the growth, Scott?
Yeah, so I think so for the building department, because we have so many massive projects that are coming in, so we'll continue to see those fees. We are seeing, as of right now, fewer building permits total, but they're actually kind of on average larger building permits. So it's like those folks who can still afford to build a house under a 5+% interest rate are going to be able to, and will build the larger houses that they want to. And so we'll see how that goes for the building department. Planning department is not as self-sufficient and self-funding as building departments are. They're not so fee-based. So our services really are rooted in customer service. We're an essential service for the city, doing things like general plan. But the $350 that we receive for a zoning text amendment, doesn't cover the time for this meeting, let alone like the time that we do. So there are some areas of the budget that the general plan gives up, or the general fund gives up for those planning services. And just know as we've been asked to look at our budget over 10 years and what the need needs to be, that the planning department runs, I think, very well staffed and well equipped, but also as lean as possible, and would continue to run that way, just because it's somebody's livelihood on the line if things were to slow way down. that the city has to make a difficult cut on. So building department, on the other hand, you have high years and lean years, and really those high years are, hopefully you bank some money that will ride you through some of those lean years. But as of right now, I think that we're going to be able to more than cover that new person.
We appreciate your leadership, Scott. Great job you're doing for us. There is one classification of home builders you didn't mention, though. Those that are still going to build that can't afford the 5%. Me and you. All right. Any questions, council, of Scott and Councilmember Dowd has regarding building and planning? All right, we will move on then. We have tonight with us Chief Quinney. His budget is so complicated that the council member didn't dare show up to help him. So he's pretty much on his own tonight, but I would say copious notes by Councilmember Swanson. However, Councilmember Severing and myself have had a chance to sit down with the chief and go through his budget fairly thoroughly. And so, Chief, go ahead and present here to the rest of the council and the citizens.
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you, council. This is the 2022-2023 Police and Community Services budget. Most of this I've combined the two budgets. The Community Services division comprised of animal control, code enforcement, and our evidence tech, and it's a relatively small budget. First of all, what makes us great? Now, I'll just tell you simply, it's the community we work for, and it's you folks that helps provide the resources that we need, that these young these men and women that wear the uniform need to do their job. And most recently, this includes some programs to help us with retention and to attract seasoned officers that can come in and bring us some experience that we were lacking just not so long ago.
Chief, could you just briefly report to council and the public here how you feel the success of that program that was implemented with retention and to recruit, how that's worked for you?
It was a 180. It was a 180-degree turn. We went from being shorthanded. The majority of our staff was fairly new and inexperienced, although they're fine people doing a great job. To within a short couple of months, bringing in 5 or 6 officers that we pulled from all over Davis, Weaver, lots of other counties, and just come in and filled that gap that has just done an awesome job. Not only do they come in and step right in and hit the ground running, but there's somebody that our younger officers can look up to and look to ask questions and just look as an example. And I'll just tell you, every one of those lateral officers, what we call them, that's come to us from other agencies has nothing but praise for this community, this department, and the experience that they've had in this few months they've been here. So just couldn't be happier. It's been great. So thank you. We appreciate that. And I don't want to fail to mention the new building that we're starting to see some work on next door. What that means to the staff. I can't wait to see the excitement and looks on their faces when they get to walk through that door for the first time and actually realize what they've been missing. Actually have the tools at their disposal to do this difficult job that we ask of them. So thank you for that. The police department community services, some of our deliverables and goals, quite simply our deliverables are our service to the community and then safety and security of the community. And some of the goals that go with each of those deliverables is to keep the response times low, timely and thorough investigations, make time for public relation activities and events, keep the ability to provide non-criminal services to the community, keep proactive policing our priority, keep North Ogden a community that is not attracted to criminals, and maintain staffing levels for a growing community. And if you recall the council's priority list that came out a few months ago, which there was also some input from the citizens, was priority number 1 and 2 were to occupy this building, and number 2 was keep our staffing levels appropriate with the growth that we're experiencing. So that's where a lot of those goals came from, is those 2 priorities. Okay, just some notable budget requests that are in our budget this year is a 23rd officer, and the cost for that, which we were asking for mid-year, would be just over $99,000. That's salaries, benefits, and then equipment. And the 4th one down, there's 5 police vehicles, and one of those vehicles would be for that 23rd officer. The other 2 that are notable is a part-time community service officer moved to full-time, and a part-time administrative assistant moved to full-time. As we're going through these, I won't stop at each slide and just ask for questions. If you have a question, just interrupt me.
Mayor.
Yes, Mayor.
This is for, I think, the council and the public's benefit. But when you look at that, on the movement of a part-time to full-time community services and a part-time to full-time administrative assistant, that is primarily the result of benefits that will be provided, not necessarily large salary increases. Is that correct?
That's right, because a part-time employee doesn't get the same benefit package that a full-time employee gets. So making that part-time or a full-time kind of makes those benefits accessible to them. And I'll go into why some of those requests have been made here in this slide. So, all right, perfect. So I just know you just want to know the bottom line, right? So I was given a piece of the pie. Here's your piece of the pie. Get your budget to fit in it. And so thanks for the drum roll. And sorry, that's a little hard to say. I struggled with the colors, and I wanted to make sure it was. Anyway, the bottom line is, and the answer is no. We're missing the mark by $202,870. That's our combined deficit between the 2 departments. You can see the in the police department, our piece of the pie that's been allocated is $3,624,913. The proposed expense budget is $3,790,584. For community services, the revenue that's been allocated to that division is $172,400, and the proposed expense is $206,843. So I'm going to use that $202,870 figure for the rest of the presentation, just to simplify it a little bit. So next slide. Just a comparison from our current budget year that we're in and the proposed budget. Fiscal year 22, our budget was $3,351,000. Fiscal year 23, our proposed budget is $4 million, just a little over $4 million. Difference of $648,578. That's a 19.4% increase. Next row down, you'll see, you've heard the term a few times, unfunded depreciation. And this amount here is the change in accounting practices that the city's adopted.
Thanks for being so kind. It's actually inappropriate accounting from previous years that we need to catch up. And so the chief is getting, maybe inappropriate, it's not a creative account. It's a creative accounting situation that each department now is being hit with as a catch up from the last probably, what, John, 4 or 5 years? And so it's hitting us all this year. So that's, I think what Chief, you might be getting at, that's not really a request you made. But I would like your expansion on unfunded depreciation.
Sorry, I'm not prepared for
that. Yeah, I'm not sure anybody is yet.
Thanks for that, Mayor. So that change in accounting practices equates to the nearly $270,000 of that difference. Take that away from the actual difference, and that leaves $378,000 increase from this year to next year, which is just over 11%. And then the revenue that's being allocated to the police department from 3.3 million to 3.8, 445,000, 13.3%. Now I'm gonna get into that $378,000 difference that takes the unfunded depreciation out of it. Why that increase? So it's all salaries and benefits. You see 265,000 of it is salaries, 109,000 is benefits, for a total of 374,801. So it's nearly just off by about 4,000 to change. Those numbers include the additions of staff that proposed, that addition of an officer, and then they go part-timers full-time. 164,000 of that is the staff additions, and the other 210,000 is basically the city just saying we want to make sure we keep our staff fairly compensated. So that's additions of salary and benefits that are. Councilman Swanson?
I think it's important to point out that the increases that we're seeing in salaries and benefits to be competitive, the retention and attraction bonuses that we institute are being seen statewide. It's really industry-wide, nationwide. It's not a unique thing to just keep officers and staff here in North Ogden. It really is statewide in particular. There's a real poaching game going on.
It's the whole supply and demand concept, right? There is no supply.
No.
So we are battling for good people to come and serve our community. And to do that, we have to be competitive. You know, 20 years ago, you might have 100 applicants for every opening, and now we're lucky to have one or two.
You're right.
So
they might be qualified.
And they might be. And we're going to lose out to other agencies if we're not competitive. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Okay, next slide. I just want to give you an idea of that $4 million budget. What really do we have any control of? So if you take personnel and capital expenditures, which capital expenditures is basically just their vehicles they drive. What else is there? Out of that 4 million, we have that $314,000 number. That's what's left if you take people and cars out of it. Take that $314,000 and you subtract activities that are funded by grant money. That's $71,000. You take away mandatory expenses, which is state mandated training, policy management, the trust fund expense that we have to pay every year, and our fee to dispatch. That's another $27,000. Take away any outsourced services, which is the SWAT teams, narcotic strike force, our crime scene investigators, and the animal shelter. That's another $101,000. You take that away from that $314,000 discretionary budget, that leaves us with $114,000 that we actually have any control over. And that's small equipment purchases, that's any software, computers, maintenance of equipment, paper clips and paper and printers, and just things that we to operate every day. So we really we don't have a lot of control over that $4 million when you take away people and vehicles. So when we're tasked with finding some cuts. That's not a lot to find cuts in. There's some compromises that we'll go over in a few slides, but just want to give you that kind of little bit of information. So what creates the need to adjust staffing levels? There's a number of different metrics that are out there, and we'll hit on a couple of those. Obviously, population and daytime population. There's also a business district, but daytime population basically is between 8 a.m. and 5 a.m. or 5 p.m. What does your population do? I'll just give you an extreme example, Riverdale. They have a population of about 9,000 citizens. But between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m., they have about 50,000. So that's a lot of difference from your policing from 2 a.m. to 2 p.m. because they have to take that into account. So next one down. Call volume. How much calls for service do you actually get? Demographics. Where does your city sit? What borders it? Do you have a major interstate? Do you have trains, buses, anything like that? And then just best practices. What works best for a community like North Ogden? And then crime rates. Okay. There.
And Chief, I think it's important to point out, if you go back that one slide, on call volume. I know when we were doing some research on options, we had quite a few call volumes, and I think what that says to us is the reliance our citizens have on the police department solving problems. Because I think on a per population, per citizen basis, we had some pretty high level calls. But I think that goes back to the relationship we have with the citizens, that they can rely. I've had numerous citizens tell me that in other cities they lived in, an officer's never knocked on their door and told them after 10 o'clock their garage door was open. So in preventing crime, so our citizens do expect, I think, a fairly high level of service. And we're thankful to Jeremy for climbing the trees to get the cats out.
He's only fallen out of 3 of them. So and that was one of the goals, is to be able to maintain that level of service. Just to give you an idea of what our population is doing, and I'm sure you're all very aware of this, but just this here alone kind of made me a little nervous about our staffing. At the end of 2021, about the best number I could find as far as our current population was right around 22,000. And thanks to the council and the community, we got our number 22 officer January 1st. So good timing. Just to give you an idea, I had Scott help me out with these numbers, and our planning department. If you account or average 3 occupants for every household, and you look at this, you see that we've got 1,309 homes that have been approved and are currently somewhere in the process of either being built or planned or even moved into. And that 1,309 homes comes from just over a couple hundred single family homes. And then what we heard tonight, the Village of Prominence Point, that has 400 units remaining to be filled. And if these folks get their, if it all works out for these folks, those 400 units might be coming sooner than they think, it sounds like. The Lodge, 24 units remaining, Patriot Point, 389 units, Coopertown, 158 units, and then sounds like Century Farms is on its way too. So you average each one of those units by 3 people per unit, and we're about to build our population by close to 4,000 people. And if that happened overnight, well, it's not going to happen. We'd quickly be down 3.9 officers. if you use the statistic of 1 officer per 1,000 people. So we've got some growth happening, and I'll just tell you, I do believe in being proactive, not only in police work, but in making sure we keep up with what's coming at us. So we don't want to have crime go out of the roof. We have to react to it. I'll just give you a cut in insight on my idea of proactive policing and what it does for a community. The community is best served by a police department that has greatest opportunity to approach enforcement proactively. This means we stop crime before they happen. It gets the word out that North Ogden is not a good place to engage in criminal conduct. Criminals that believe there is a chance of getting caught will go somewhere else. Proactive policing is accomplished through self-initiated officer activities. Officers who are busy reacting to crime will not have the opportunity to engage in the more productive self-initiated activity. An important factor in the determination of how effective a police department is the ratio of self-initiated activity to total activity. Anything that causes call volume to increase will cause proactive policing to decrease. Officers can't do both at the same time. 3 things that can play into call volume is the population growth, commercial growth, and an increase in crime index. The trend has been that North Ogden Police Department has kept self-initiated activity about 50% of total activity. So last year we handled almost 14,000 calls for service. 7,000 of those calls for service were initiated by the officers themselves, not having to be called to clean up a crime that happened or to a crime in progress. They were actively searching, seeking for work to do. So that's impressive. I'm impressed. Good job, Richard. Our goal would be to maintain that 50% ratio. An increase in any of the 3 items listed above would cause that ratio to go down, triggering the need to add staff. Measuring proactive policing activity takes into account all circumstances that affect staffing needs rather than just one. So rather than just say, well, we're just going to react to population, or we're going to react to the crime index, or we're going to react to a business that's moved in, that we react to this ratio of proactive policing because any one of those things can trigger that reaction. So, and the final slide on proactive policing is proactive policing is by far the most effective tool for crime prevention. More officers means more time spent preventing crime before it happens. Mere officer presence is a powerful crime deterrent. Criminals do not fear punishment. Criminals fear getting caught. Higher officer presence equals higher chance of catching criminals before or during a crime. Lower crime rates could be the result of effective proactive policing. All right, that's my spiel on proactive policing. I strongly believe in it. And I believe that if North Ogden wants to, and I believe they do, keep the quality of life that they enjoy, and I hope they do enjoy it. That's the approach we need to take to our policing in North Ogden. And just a little spiel on the community service and the records divisions. Those are the 2 part-timers that I'm asking to be made full-time. And the reason I'm doing that is not only because of our growth, that is an important part of it, but we have just dumped an enormous amount of responsibility on them. And when I say we, the state, the courts, and nobody was intending to do that. It's just the way it happened. So the records, gals in the records department, they just, I don't know if y'all heard of the Rule 16 discovery. It's a new rule in the courts, or it's an updated rule. It used to be that a defendant could get what we call discovery, which is a copy of the file, including all photos, videos, if they requested it. This new rule, which just came into effect first of the year, says that every defendant will get discovery regardless, they're entitled to it. So that just increased their workload by 1,000%, like they're saying. At least 10, 15 hours a week, just doing discovery. That's everything from a traffic stop, which includes body cam, dash cam, plus all the paper documents. And then all that video and photo evidence has to be edited for content, so don't make sure we give out personal information. It's just an enormous amount of work that they've just inherited. On top of that, they also now are the administrative assistant to the prosecutor. This was something that the courts did just a few months ago, and that's something another job that they've just taken on. As far as our community service department, we've taken some non-criminal duties that our sworn officers were doing and asked them if they would take those on. And they've done it, and they've done it without complaint, but they've done it without adding any man hours. And you all know code enforcement, it's a pretty hot topic. There's a number of council meetings that I've been able to observe where code enforcement it takes up a lot of those meetings. So it's out there, and we would love to better serve the community as far as code enforcement goes. Another thing we've asked of our community services is that we've extended their hours. They now are Monday through Saturday. And eventually Sunday, I foresee that being like a 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. position to offer both support to the sworn officers and more to the community with the animal complaints and code enforcement. I think that covers the added duties to them. So I thought, well, I can't bring them a $200,000 deficit without offering some options and perhaps some compromises. Option number one is that the council can seize the needs of what I presented and somehow find the revenues to cover that $200,000 deficit. And just to give you an example, I had some numbers. Jamie helped me out with some numbers. I know that it's already built into the proposed budget a 7% property tax increase. To meet this $200,000 deficit, if that property tax increase was increased 18%, that would absorb that deficit. What does that 18% mean? Rather than the 7%, if it was 18%, that would mean an additional $2.52 a month to the average Utah household. What do you get for that $2.52? You get sufficient public safety staff to keep North Ogden safe. You get reliable vehicles and equipment that enables them to do their job. Yes, sir.
Is that an increase to 18 1/4 or an additional 18 1/4% on top of the 7, which would be 25 and change?
It's an increase from 7 to 18.
Okay, thank you.
So an 11.25%. That's option number one. Option number two, this is where the compromises come in. If we were to eliminate the 23rd officer from the proposal, is the vehicle that would come with him $1,000 for the training that 23rd officer would need. A little bit, $800 from our investigations budget for a tracking device that we would not participate in. One laptop, which would be just bumped a year, that I believe we could get one more year out of, and it's probably going to be mine, but that's okay. And then $2,200 from our community service officers training budget. That $2,200 was meant to cover their animal control and code enforcement conferences. If we eliminated everything on that page there, that would get that deficit down to 54,900, which is still a deficit. but it's a compromise and it's meeting part way. If you're willing to give up that 23rd officer, which is the second priority on your priority list this year. So there you go. That's it, options 1 and 2. And I'll just tell you, Jamie threw out another option, which I wish he was here, but it might be something that could be talked about later. But with put that 23rd officer on hold. And because it is a mid-year request, just watch the revenues. And if the revenues don't come in, satisfactorily, then we just, okay, we'll just wait a year. But if they come in and things are looking promising, things are looking good, and we still feel that we need that officer to meet our needs, then we can look at it at that time. So she did throw that out, and I appreciate her for doing that. So that's what I got. Thanks. Happy to answer any questions if you got them.
Council, do you have any questions for Chief Quinney? Councilmember Swanson.
That third option that you just presented, that's kind of how we did the 22nd officer last year, right?
Yep.
We knew we needed one. Revenue showed that we could do it. And so then we pulled the trigger and did it.
Yep. Well, I'll just tell you, this is not just an opinion. I believe this, that we've piled enough work on those 2 part-time employees that it's just not fair to ask what we're asking them. So that in my mind is a necessity.
So in moving our part-time to full-time, I mean, a lot of the expense is benefits, right? And is that benefits that, it's like 401k and savings and kind of things like that, and are there benefits that they don't necessarily need or want? Like insurance and things like that, if they've got them covered elsewhere. I mean, because I'm assuming we're talking about specific individuals that have,
Maybe John could answer that, but I believe when Jamie budgets or prepares that budget dollar amount, she includes if they were to accept every benefit. That's you're right. They may turn some down. So
okay, so that's just
Yeah, the hard part is it crosses into the HR line of what you can ask, and if you're offering a position, you can't say what benefits are you going to take. We just have to.
Oh, for sure. It's just, that makes complete sense. I'm just curious, this is, we're talking about pinching pennies. I don't know if this is, I am of the opinion, and maybe but I think this is why I'm here. North Ogden has been run extremely leanly. And I think it's just time that we catch up. I don't feel like North Ogden is a struggling, poor community, and they have expectations of a certain level of service. One of the things we're going to hear Parks and Rec here in just a minute, and I believe Parks and Rec and policing go together. It's like the better we have places and programs for kids and the public to go, the less police we need. And so it's like, I want to see that together. And so, and what I see, and especially you're estimating like a household of, 3, I think that's low for North Ogden. You know what I mean? I've got 8 in mine and plus a couple of spares, but I seem to take in strays. So it's, I'm looking at, even if they move out, because costs are so high, they're pooling their resources, right? So you're going to get 5 and 6 people as opposed to just 3. So I agree with yours, and maybe I'm in the minority, but for me, property tax has been held artificially low, and we're kind of compensating with that. And to me, it's time that we gradually did, and this unfunded depreciation is kind of what's okay. We've got to catch up. And we can kind of look at maybe taking that unfunded depreciation and, gradually adding to it till we do catch up over years. But, I'm not opposed to just saying, okay, we've been doing it this way so far, and now it's time. We do have inflation happening with everything, which means our sales tax is going to go up because we collect a percentage. right? And, I think even maintaining the rate for property taxes has not even caught up. So it's like I would, at least kind of start to inch that upwards. But anyway, that's just kind of the world according to Charlotte.
Actually, I would say the more parks, the more police, because we have a vandalism problem in the city that we need to solve somehow.
Just don't put bathrooms in
And we don't think about some of those things that add cost to the city. With the vandalism and the things that do take place, we have to replace those things. And so thanks for your comments. Any other comments? Councilmember Dalpaz?
So I think the 23rd officer, it's based off of an estimation, right? Because I think the only time we actually get firm numbers on a population is every 10 years with the census. Is there any other firm way to get a population that we know of?
I think that 21,800 is based on the recent census. I think that's where that number came from.
Okay.
Or close to it. The rest obviously is based upon how many building permits are out there and how fast it takes place. But I think we did get an update in the population from the last census, didn't we, John?
We did, and then we also can rely on active water meters as well as an estimated people per household.
Okay.
But it's not, as accurate as the census is.
Well, and I've always maintained this, that two things that are happening that are basically being directed by the state and blamed on local government is increased units per acre. And we all know, no matter how good people are, if they're shoved together and they get frustrated, they have no place to go, we end up with more domestic problems that our police force are dealing with. So this ratio of 1 per 1,000 could change on us depending on the crime rate. The other thing is the auxiliary building or auxiliary dwelling units, where there's encouragement to people to rent out their basements. So you get an automatic population increase with really no increase in property tax, right? Because the property tax is the same, we just have more people living in one unit. So these are some of the things too that have to be taken into consideration. Chief, appreciate your presentation. I know in a recent study that the council is looking at, that we asked to be done by an outside third party, that there's been some questions whether the chief goes to bat for the officers. And I can tell you from my perspective, he's very concerned about the officers in the department. And he's at the mercy of this poor city council right here. So he tries hard and leaves it up to the council. And I have confidence in the council as we hear these presentations and then we take the time to assemble all the information we've got and look at the budget. I'm confident we'll come up with some solutions that are viable. Councilmember Swanson.
Just a quick comment for council to have in your mind as we, as we look at the needs that Chief has painted a good portrait of. And as we hear from Parks and what we've heard from the other departments, one of the considerations we haven't talked a lot about, really haven't talked about is we are not mandated to catch up on the unfunded depreciation in a single year. Right, that's $455,000. One of the options that is before us that we can employ if we desire is to spread it. I mean, it took us 4 or 5 years to get there. There are competing needs across the city, right? We obviously need and want to take care of that 455 as soon as we possibly can. But is it necessary to do it in a single year? Could we do it in 3 years or 4 years and program that which would then free up revenues for other needs within the city that, as we have these final discussions after we've heard from parks and recreation, is that a source of providing for some of these needs by spreading that out? So just put that in the back of your mind as we hear the rest of the presentations and consider that, because we're going to have a discussion on it very soon.
It's a good comment. Thank you, Councilmember Swanson. I think the other thing that we're still digesting, I mean, we are digesting this cultural assessment that we got. Not only do we have to be competitive in wages and benefits, but with equipment, making sure that we're keeping competitive there, meeting the officers' needs in that aspect. And that really hasn't been probably addressed yet, because we haven't been able to, get to the bottom of the revenues and expenses we have in the city. But we are cognizant of the fact that we have to be competitive too with equipment and the needs of that degree too. So any other questions before we move on to parks and recreation? Presentation. Thank you. Councilman Barker has been waiting for this for weeks. I mean, he is like, been so excited to do this.
Yeah.
So Tiffany, you want to come up and help him out?
I'm excited. This is the 500 slide presentation, right?
I was gonna say, we probably want to take a
Not
5 minute
quite.
break first.
Think we should.
No, I just have to say thank you to Councilmember Barker for the multiple times he's come up to the office to ensure that he understands this and that we have good information for you tonight.
Let's see if I understand this. Hey, John, you want to turn off that light real quick?
Whoops. You just turned that in.
Otherwise, I'm not gonna do it. Okay, so at the Parks Department, let Tiffany do most of the talking, but Parks and Rec is actually 4 departments. Found out it's the Parks, the Recreation, Parks and Rec Admin, and then the Aquatic. Right there, look at that. Tiffany did these slides because I'm a firefighter. And technology and me don't get along. Deliverables definition, there's things you provided in intangible and tangible. We're gonna go over those. You can talk about your team.
Sure. So for our team, we have a mission and vision statement. The mission of the Parks and Recreation Department is to provide the community with exceptional facilities and activities for health, learning, and play. And our overall vision is that we'll create a nurturing environment for a lifetime of memories and neighborhood connection. And that ties in with the goals that we have, and you'll see those as we go throughout these slides.
These are our tangibles that the parks offers: parks, open space, recreation, aquatics, and community events. And then this slide is the interesting one to me. There's our Parks Department, and you can see we have 2 positions that we haven't filled, plus a whole bunch of seasonal employees that haven't been filled. So we've got 4 people in the Parks Department right now that mow and maintain our parks. I hope I'm speaking correctly.
You are.
Okay,
Yep.
There we go. Moving on. 12 parks. As you can see on the talker, so we're gonna go through this slides fast. Okay, here says good. We've got all these courts and fields, lots of them. And we're gonna get over the fields here in a minute. We'll get to recreation, because I found some other stuff interesting. 9 facilities that they maintain, so every city building. Maintain the out exteriors. 3,600 sprinklers. So we have an irrigation specialist that maintains all of our sprinklers. And Phil and I actually discussed something down in St. George about our sprinklers, but that'll come up at a future time. 9 restrooms that Chief Quinny likes a lot. You got 9 pavilions, 9 playgrounds, and a complicated trail system. Have I missed anything? Okay. We are an arbor city, so that means we do a lot of tree planting and tree maintenance. We do have arborists that are in our city parks department, so they're trained to trim trees.
All, of course, all of our flowers that are hanging in light poles and also in planters. And then this one, we work with the police department and they do the cleanup on vandalism repair. Of course, holiday lighting. So I can't even read all that.
I'm sorry, council. Someone listening online is concerned about the crunching bags. Apparently the microphones are picking it up, so, all right.
We do have that, yeah, extensive lights down here and up, down here by Centennial Park and out the Parker Park, all of that's combined. And then one other big one is that the Parks Department actively does snow removal with the Public Works. They do all the cul-de-sacs, city building, parking lot, sidewalks. So when Dave calls out his team, the Parks Department gets called out as well. And here's their budget. They're 10.15% of the city's budget. And here's how it's broken down. 68% employee salaries, 13% to the motor pool. The other ones, and then the discretionary, the maintenance of the turf fields is 11% with employee training, irrigation supplies, which if you've gone to replace your sprinklers are not cheap. Tools and department supplies, as well as plant trees and chemicals. And chemicals doubled this year from last year.
That's not just fertilizer, that's the chemicals we use at the aquatic center too, isn't it?
No, well, yes, but that wasn't in that slide.
Right, the chemicals in general.
You're both correct.
I'm staying on parks right
Who's
now.
most correct though?
Okay. Nope, I know my role. So here's a change from last year from our 2021-22 budget. Salaries and wages have gone up 54,320. Motor pool, this is the mayor's unfunded depreciation went up about $26,000. And then chemical about $10,000. Okay, and here's our goal again, provide beautiful, well-maintained parks, restrooms, and buildings. Mayor.
Could we expand a little bit on the $54,000 increase in salaries? Is that coming up or do you have that information?
So that's not any increase in employees.
Nope, that's wage increase with benefits.
Okay, thank you.
Now we're going to the recreation department. This one I've learned a lot in the last day about the recreation department. So Becca is our supervisor, and actually all the seasonal employees are filled right now. So we have all of them for baseball, softball, t-ball. And here's what the rec department does. So spring youth sports is right now baseball, softball, kickball, t-ball. Here's an interesting fact for you guys. How many t-ball teams do you think North Ogden City has? Just North Ogden. This is kindergarten only. That's a lot. No.
Well, it says 32 players.
Huh?
32 players?
Well,
That's not many
that
teams.
can't be right because,
You're right.
That's
It's
not right.
there on my end.
no, so 32, there's about 10 to 12 kids per team. There's 14 teams in North Ogden.
Just T-ball, kindergarten.
Yeah, just in t-ball. And then baseball is, I think is strong too. First grade and second, this is what my youngest plays. So this is coach pitch. If they want to play machine pitch, they go to Pleasant View. So just coach pitch in North Ogden, we have 14 teams as well. I looked at the roster today of North Ogden kids. And then if they go to Pleasant View, there's 10 teams over there with machine pitch. And then they kind of slow down after that. Yes.
So based upon this, is recreation pretty much self-supporting through fees?
We're gonna get there.
Okay, I'll wait.
Okay, but I'm just letting you know, so. After.
There's demand.
There is a demand and Becca and Tiffany told me, so they started seeing the demand last fall. We'll go to the next slide. Summer is football. They saw it with football. Last year, they were 13 teams in North Ogden. We averaged before that 9. So a 50% increase in football. And then summer camps, cherry days and the 5K and the running club, those went their self-sustaining. Summer camps support themselves. Rec doesn't support itself. And then basketball is way up as well. And the issue with basketball is there's only one court in North Ogden to play on with all of our teams. Because it's at North Ogden Elementary. Bates and Green Acres have 2 small gyms and we can't put teams there. So, the rec department's 2% of our budget. 60% is employee salary and benefits, and then the 40% is discretionary. 13% goes to football. That's the most expensive sport because you need all the equipment. The safety equipment, 8% to baseball, softball, kickball, t-ball, basketball is 8%, and then 6% is training and computer stuff. There's checking on that.
That's
Oh.
probably a good thing. This is why I don't do finance.
So-
I even sat down with Jamie to check numbers and I still missed one, so.
So here's the changes from last year's salaries, wages, and benefits actually went down $3,344. He explained it's where he's utilizing more professional refs or.
Yes, so putting 15-year-olds out there sometimes in the middle of games can be a little rough. And so there's kind of been a swap in the amount we pay. So each of the sport budgets has room in it for officials. And we're utilizing them more contracted officials than we are putting 15-year-olds in the middle of conflict.
We did take out $16,000, $650 from summer camps. We're not doing a performing arts camp this year. But next year it's gonna come back because we're gonna put it back in and do a performing arts camp next year. And then $8,000 is football equipment because we have such a high demand and we've got to provide them equipment. And it's hard to project, but we're guessing maybe next year we'll have to buy more equipment because they are seeing a spike in kids, which is growth. You have a lot of younger families moving in with younger kids, so. And that's the recreation goal, to provide exceptional sports programs and activities to promote health, learning, and play for North Ogden residents. Am I skipping stuff?
No.
Okay,
we're
good.
Great.
Now we're to the aquatic center. And we are short 10 lifeguards right now. Okay, so we're down 10 lifeguards. And the rest of the staff is.
We have cashiers and girls.
Okay.
Usually at this time of year, well, May 1st, we usually have applications to go through. And we're still 10 short a month later, so we feel like we're cutting it a little close.
Here's the aquatic department. Of course, the facility, we have public swimming, fitness, summer activities. See stomp, flick and float, Benny's boat race, reservations, and swimming lessons. And this one was when the council decided before my time, open swim hours are from 12 to 8 and 12 to 6 on other days. But they open at 12 o'clock, 11 o'clock on Friday and Saturday, we're closed Sunday. Fitness programs, they're over there at like 6 in the morning, I can tell you that. Not by me being there, but from, I don't know. There's always activity at the pool, Benny's boat race, if you haven't done that, fill the cardboard box and come float. And summer stomp and flick and float. So Tiffany and the aquatic center, they changed reservations this year. From, it used to be 1 reservation, or you could reserve the Bowery once a night. Now they're gonna do 2 reservations a night. So from 1 from 6 to 7:30, and then they'll clear the pool up and do from 8 to 9:30. 8 to 9:30, is that right? 8:30 to 10. So there'll be 2 reservations, so they can try to get twice the revenue off of reservations. And it's staying open later till 10 o'clock, which is normal. Swimming lessons, that's how many they taught last year. And swimming lesson is the most lucrative revenue generator. But, and if you do more swimming lessons, you can cut out free swimming over open swimming, so. Okay, there's your lifeguards, cashiers, grounds, shift management, so they're all trained, certified. You don't want a lifeguard that doesn't know how to swim, so. It's its own individual fund. They do need a fund balance from the, I hope I say this right, the RDA of 176,208 that needs to be transferred in to help maintain the park, the pool. And there's their breakdown, 59% salaries and benefits, 11% utilities, drug testing, credit card fees, and then the discretionary is the 7% pool chemical, 10% is the blue slide resurfacing. So that's a fiberglass slide. If you don't resurface it, you're gonna get slivers in not nice places. And then other stuff. Any questions? Mayor?
I do, if I recall correctly, of that 176,000, 60,000 of it is for some repairs that need to be done, around 60,000, is that correct? So that would still leave us 116,000 subsidy. And we all know that at the end of 2023 or 4, the RDA kind of gets closed up. So if we don't narrow that gap, that becomes a general fund expense. So I know we've got some time to try to narrow that, but it's something we should continue to need to work on.
And they did, Tiffany can explain, but last year they did narrow it a lot.
Just pray for hot weather.
Well, then you're gonna
Let me get the drought.
But
Yeah, blood
the neighboring is actually playing neighbors to the pool prays for rain, so we'll see which one wins. The fire department, we want great stuff. Okay, here's the change from last year. 21,000 increase for salaries, 40,000 to do the slide, 5,000 for chemicals, and then electronic notices went down because we're doing social media advertising, and other stuff. And your goal, provide a safe and clean and fun and quiet center. Now the events department. So this one, as you can see, we have an opening for the events coordinator, and this is what events does. 15 city events. There's a lot up there. I can't read them all, but there's a lot. The most notable one that I've seen a change in without the events coordinator is Food Truck Thursdays right now, because Tiffany says all they do is like call the food truck league and say we need 8 or so food trucks. Show up to North Ogden Park, and we don't have anyone there to make sure they set up right or to make sure that there's no problems. We just hope everything goes off well. So without any coordinator, we're gonna have to cut some of these out. Okay, go ahead. Here's Cherry Days in itself has 20 something events.
I didn't count them.
Okay, there's a lot. There's, yeah, all those events go with Cherry Days. And then we also support local activities. We had the Easter egg hunt about 2 weeks ago. Ramp summer Saturdays are coming out in the summer. The Veterans Day program, and then Chop It Up in the north. And then the events also generates about 400,000, so 396,000 in grants each year.
That was the last 3 years.
Oh, last 3 years. So a little over 115, 120,000 a year. 140, somewhere in there. Marketing and advertising. So we did send out the flyer. I'd seen that in the hallway, and Tiffany brought one. This actually got sent to every kid in elementary school, and it was paid for by, we had a sponsor, so the events coordinator actually went out and got a sponsor for it, so that we don't have to pay for that. And in 2021, we had 40 amphitheater rentals. We figure about the same this year. And they're about 3.4% of the budget. 65% salaries and benefits, and then 33% discretionary. So 13% goes to Cherry Days, 8% to the amphitheater program, which is the community theater performance, 5% ramp, and that's the money that ramp gives us, but we have to put it in the budget. And then 7% to training, music, licensing, computer, all the other stuff. So from last year, wages went up 17,000. That's if we hire the events coordinator. $26,000 in increase in Cherry Days because last year we didn't do fireworks. So this year we're planning on it. And then the only thing that changed in that department is $76 for music licensing. We have to pay more. Yeah, we have to pay $76 more. Oh wait, we didn't do the other activities. We did fireworks, but nothing else.
Right.
That's what it was.
Yeah, just wanted to clarify that, make sure my. So I have one question here. Tiffany, you probably could answer this. You know, we talked about Monday night music and the lack of success we've had in that. Could you explain some of the enhancements that we've talked about to make that successful? Because I think the discussion is we wouldn't continue that on if we didn't enhance it and make it successful. Could you just touch on that briefly?
Yeah, absolutely. So the direction that we were headed last year was to get bigger name performers and also better sound because there isn't any at the facility. And so with that, we were able to get a sponsor who took care of all of the sound. But we paid a lot more for bigger groups, which we don't think actually fits the intent of what that activity was meant to be. And so we are switching back to smaller local hometown groups that, you know, they may not generate thousands of people from around the area, but they would be good for a couple hundred here and fit kind of back into what we had originally intended with that Monday night activity.
Were we going to include some activities for kids and stuff to try to generate more family involvement? Did I misinterpret that on
We
Mondays?
would be happy to with someone to do that.
I think that, you know, we've got to do something, and as we've discussed, to generate involvement from the community in that. So thank you for the update.
Okay, and so the events, they want to provide great events. Imagine that. Department structure, so it's got the parks and I can't even see what that says, Parks and Rec.
Administrative assistant. So
On the glasses.
the events and parks and recreation admin budgets are combined. And so on the previous slide that showed changes and increases, the increases in salaries and benefits were for the events coordinator, were part of the Parks and Rec director positions for the administrative assistant that's shown here as well.
Okay, now the intangibles, these are the hard ones that you can't quantify. Resident satisfaction, job opportunities, public health and wellness, aquatic safety, neighborhood desirability, improved tax base, increased property values, and environmental impact. This is one where we've talked, if we're gonna cut anything, it's gonna be the intangibles, what level of service do we want to provide for our parks? And then, so here's the one that we're looking for. This is how the Parks Department budget's been broken down, and we put it all on one slide. This is what was interesting to me. Last year in the Parks Department budget, you can see, but it's all right. Our budget was $832,588. This year at $922,901, so an increase of about $60,000 that goes towards salaries and benefits. The motor pool fund of 26,000, and then the chemicals. So the bottom number are from last year's budget to this year, we're short about $25,000. In the recreation department, last year's budget was $210,991. This year it went down to $198. So we lost $12,000. Salaries and benefits went down. Our performing arts camp went down and football went up. So now we're still short 22,000. In the events department, the budget last year, 343. This year it's 386. It went down. So the events department budget went down again. Overall, the three budgets between those three departments our Parks Department budget went down this year, our allocated amount. And we're asked to give raises and fund the depreciation with less money than they had last year. So that's why we're short $133,000. Any questions? And then the aquatics, its own fund.
Any questions, Council?
Tiffany will be happy to answer.
Yes, it's directed toward Tiffany. Tiffany, how many budget years have you come in under budget?
All of them.
All of them, right? It's like they're really careful. So, you know, in accounting school, we learned that budgets are not meant to be bludgers for people. These are estimates and, so far we've been really conservative on our budget revenue projections and they're coming in way higher. They're coming in like 20% higher. So I just want to kind of keep us in mind with these things, that these are our best guess estimates too, when we want to have a good budget, but generally we try to be careful with stuff. So.
Yeah, a lot of people are using the term plan instead of budget. It's a plan, but Councilmember Swanson and myself met with John earlier. And we're probably of the opinion there's more uncertainties in today's situation than we've experienced previously. I think too, the decision the council is going to be faced with, and I would hope that each department would submit their slides to the council, because we will now meet after getting all this information and going through each budget and making final decisions, most likely in a planning meeting. But I think ultimately the council is going to have to decide if we want to be on a day-to-day basis or if we want to plan for the future, because that's where we're getting caught a little bit right now, is we focused on just meeting immediate things. And I think with the growth we're experiencing in the city, we've got to look ahead. So, do you have more for us?
I just, maybe in wrapping up, I want to, if I have any kind of emphasis on when we looked at the budget, if you take salaries and benefits and you set them aside and you take the other less discretionary numbers, I guess, the things that must be paid, the fees, the utilities and those things, and you look at what's left, the increases that we have requested have a significant amount to do with the growth of the city and the cost of inflation, being for sports like football, where we're seeing large numbers of kids come in that we haven't seen before, that we're attributing to the growth in the city, and then inflation for things like chemicals, like the mayor mentioned, both for the pool and for the parks. But other than that, the requests in our budget year have gone down in a lot of places. And then we've tried, like is shown here, it's almost laughable. We've increased our budget $76 for music licensing, but there really isn't a lot of padding in this budget. We were asked in 2020 to make cuts and made some pretty significant cuts to these budgets in order to help meet the revised budget that the council put together for COVID concerns. And we haven't seen a rebound from that. And so as I look at this budget, I have concerns in being able to continue at the current level of service with the funding that's allocated.
Councilman Dalpas, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just, a question for Tiffany is, the rates for football and softball and all the different programs that we have, do you have a sense for if they are less expensive than other cities, or in the middle of the road, or more expensive? I mean, if that might be a consideration to increase cost a little on those.
They are pretty comparable, and we took a look. So we increased the football budget in here, and a couple of weeks ago, we brought back to you the consolidated fee schedule with an increase in football fees to help cover that cost. But we feel like they're pretty comparable. We do charge more for non-residents, and we do actually find that there are quite a few non-residents for certain sports when they're not available in other cities, who will pay that additional fee in order to come and play here.
As a parent that has kids, I've registered mine a few times at Pleasant View because I didn't get registered here in time, and it was cheaper at Pleasant View than here. So we can't really raise our rates too much, or else Pleasant View's not that far away. And Harrisville's not that far away to go register my kids if money's an issue for a parent. So pretty soon, if we raise them too high, you're just not gonna have to lower the lower income population. I don't know how you say that. They won't be able to let their kids play recreation sports.
Councilman Swanson, did you have a comment?
Yeah, Tiffany, one of the things I'd like to, I know we've talked about this for years, right? Many years. 2023 is next year, right? So I'd like to see some thinking, and not necessarily an in stone plan, but some thinking on how do we get we made a great, I'm tired, can you tell? We made great progress last year in moving the aquatic center to being revenue neutral, right, where it's paying for itself. How do we continue that great progress? And get it, because the RDA goes away, right? We have to have all the monies programmed by the end of next year. And then we have, John, I can't remember how many years it is after we have them programmed to actually expend the funds. But we have to demonstrate the programming by the end of 23.
Yeah, it would typically, what the state would be wanting us to do is be looking at projects.
Right.
So it'd be program projects, not necessarily a plan for how to spend it. So we couldn't say, oh, we're gonna spend $5,000 a year for 20 years. They would want an actual project with a completion date.
Right. So that's one of the things that we're up against.
Yeah, absolutely. To speak to that just a little bit, Ryan mentioned that we've started some creative programming, I guess you would call it. We've started evening swimming lessons, trying to squeeze out any time that is left in the day. The facilities program from 5:30 in the morning to 10 at night. So we try to squeeze out any additional time or be creative in that timing so that we can put our more profitable activities back into our program without cutting into public swim time. So swimming lessons is one of those, and then splitting up our reservation blocks, hoping to double the number of reservations. There's two things that we've tried out for this year and hope to see improvement from that as well.
The other, I'm going to channel my good friend Jim Urey. He used to sit here, and I sat with mayors for a number of years. And so you've heard this question a number of times on our sports. I understand that if we raise it too high, they'll go next door, but then that means Pleasant View is
Subsidizing.
thank you very much, subsidizing our youth for sports rather than, and so there's a philosophical question there that I think has to be, that we ask continuously and that we have to answer continuously. And so I think we need to, I'd like to see a little bit of that discussion as well as we get ready to look at all the budgets and make some decisions, you know, at what point, what is the actual cost? I can't remember the last time we had this number, it's probably been years, but the actual cost to provide football per player versus what they are charged. That'll give us an idea of what residents as a whole then are subsidizing the kids that want to play sports. And then, you know, for baseball for all of them, just so that we have that, because it may be closer than we think it is. But it's not information that I have readily off the top of my head.
Can I add one more piece of this for discussion? This is the operational budget, not our capital expenditures budget, but I feel like as part of the budget discussion, it's really important to look at both, especially where a lot of Parks and Recreation Department is service oriented based on capital facilities already existing. And one of the things that we're seeing is as we see growth in the city and we see an increase in numbers, we are running out of the facilities that we need to host those kinds of events and activities. So a good solid plan for moving forward in the future if we would like to continue to maintain the same level of service that we have now.
One additional one, if I may, Tiffany and Councilmember Barker, this applies to our parks. But we've talked, I wouldn't say we've talked, we've thrown out several times about how often parks are mowed. Yeah, there's a lot of articles coming from the water conservancy districts talking about mowing our homes every 2 to 3 weeks because longer grass shades the ground better, it saves water. You know, cut less often, the grass uses less water to try to repair itself on the blades that are cut. You understand all this. Is that something that we're also looking at considering?
It's definitely not a problem at the moment. We don't have the staffing to even cut it that level.
And I'm happy to help. I'd love to grab one of those big ones. I will do it.
Please come over.
I'm serious.
Give him the push
No,
over the mayor's.
I'm riding or I'm not doing it.
Right now, at the current level, maintaining current level of service, so assuming we're not cutting corners and we're continuing things as we have done, We only have the staff capability to mow once a month. And when you get to that point, my concern is that most of our areas that we maintain, we do not bag the grass, we mulch it. And when we get to a certain point of growth, the grass will start to lay over on itself and suffocate. And
Right.
so will cause damage there. But mowing weekly is not even a concern we have at the moment.
Where do I go for training on that big mower? I'll mow the park behind.
Come up tomorrow.
Okay. I'll come visit.
He needs training on the push mower. It's not the riding mower.
Yeah, you have to start on the biggest push mower, and then you get the privilege of riding on the real mower. Council, I would just point out to Councilman Swanson and myself have also had a chance to look at the capital improvements, capital expenditures budgets. And I don't know if you've been getting the same emails I have about the condition of our parks with missing equipment. Wadman's been taken out. You know, we are doing a good job getting the griff back in order. But I think that's another thing we need to consider as we look at these budgets long term. If you get on a rotating schedule, you're not all of a sudden faced with, I think it was 100, and what did we just look at? One park was a request for 120, another one for 100. And, you know, people take their kids to the park to have something to do. So I would encourage us as we look at this budget and we finalize all the information we've received, that we look long-term on this thing, because, you know, we can't put future councils in a position where all of a sudden everything's falling apart at once. You know, we need to get on a rotation schedule that keeps our city not only viable with what we have, but with what we're facing in growth. So I would just encourage us to think along those lines. Is there anything else, Councilman Barker and Tiffany, you'd like to say?
One last thing, just to go along with what you just said. We talked tonight, roundabout way, about 2 new parks coming into our city through Century Farm coming, and then maybe down at the Village of Promise Point. We've got to find a way to maintain them and staff them. And the pond. Yep. So there's more parks coming in.
And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, John, do we have a negative balance in the parks? Fund,
Of the impact fees, you mean?
impact fees?
Yeah, we don't, we currently are owed money from the new homes still, yes.
So, and we have waived some park fees down in Patriot Point. Or
There was
park
a,
and
they call it a dedication in lieu, but yeah, we got the land given to the city in exchange for the impact fees.
so we won't be collecting impact fees on the majority of those units down there. Because
Yeah,
we've
not
got the
park
ground.
or stormwater, yeah.
Parks and stormwater. Okay, anything else? You sing or dance or anything?
What's our next
Wrap
slide?
this up.
We want to have a good city with good parks. And the next one.
That's it.
I thought that said one. Thank you.
Thank you for your efforts and time in making that presentation. All right. Councilmember Exton, you say you have a question?
Just a quick one. So what happened at Wadman Park? Is that one just not, that hasn't come in yet?
It actually was taken out for safety, so it had reached almost a 30-year lifespan. Typical on a park playground is 10 to 15 years. And so we just had to take it out before it's rotated time.
Okay. Well, it's in that wind tunnel right through there that makes it very difficult, but, okay, that was just my question.
Council, I would remind you that that's why I think it's important that we look at excess revenues over expenditures. As you recall, our goal is to accomplish that at $500,000 a year, with 20% of that going to parks for growth, repair, 10% for the buildings, and then for other projects. So if we don't do that, we're going to be in the same problem we've got. Just kind of like squirrels running on in the cage. Okay, thank you, staff, so much for your efforts, your commitment to the city, your passion for what you do. And know that we will now take all this information. I would encourage you to send the slides out so that the council have that to study as we now get down to the details of what we can and can't do and how we go about trying to accomplish our objectives and outcomes. So John will probably need to schedule a work session.
We have it, that's one for next week on May 3rd.
Okay. Thanks for letting us know.
It was on Jamie's budget slide from the 29th of March. And the focus will be capital projects, fund balances, and then salaries.
Okay. All right, let's move on. We're approaching our limit of 9:30. But I do want to give time to the public to make any comments they would like to make based upon information and presentations tonight, if any. John, if you would. Okay. All right. No. Oh, no.
I am not
I mean-
the finance person you're looking for.
You are the finance person I'm looking for. Bill, do you have anything you'd like to add to the financial information we've already received this evening in the next 37 seconds?
I'll make it very quick. If you look at the slide here, 75% of the year's elapsed. Our general fund revenues, as we have them, not including all of the sales tax, current year to date, we're at 77%. General fund expenditures are at 67%. So as always, our departments are doing excellent at coming in under budget. Thank you all. You always do a wonderful job at that. Sales tax is still running at 20% higher, but as Mayor mentioned, I'm nervous as can be with what the increasing interest rates is going to do, trickle down effects on purchasing related to home building and moving and landscaping and all of those things. I feel that we're more precarious now and what the future holds than we ever were with the pandemic, but that's just my own sense of things. We do have an audit committee meeting this Thursday in 2 days on the 28th. We'll be going over our fraud risk assessment. Council, some of the things that we need to be thinking about. Are we going to renew with Gilbert and Stewart for our auditing contract? So we need to have that discussion. Jamie recommends that we do, but we need to have that discussion. Keddington and Christensen have been providing us financial services and audit prep. We also need to discuss, are we going to continue with those financial services and audit prep or just audit prep? So just kind of be mulling that over. We'll have that discussion shortly. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you for that report. Council, I would just give you another piece of information. In the next year's budget, the amount of sales tax built into that is equal to what we've collected. Basically, we anticipate we'll collect this year. So even we're not being as conservative as we have. And even with that, you can see we have a deficit meeting our goals of over $353,000. That includes property sales tax at the level we're collecting this year. Okay. Now, John, if you would watch, see if we have anyone online or if anyone here would like to make comments. Once again, please limit your comments to 5 minutes and identify yourself and if you're a resident.
Yeah, no one really wants to get out of here, but. Spencer Alexander, North Ogden resident, 74 North 1 East. Speaker's dead, that's okay. So listening to the, you want to use this one?
Yeah, then people online can hear you.
Okay. I am a North Ogden resident, no chip bags or anything to interrupt that. 74 North 150 East, Spencer Alexander is my name. So listening to the new developer, there's a lot of things I feel strongly that they are a better choice, not that we get to really make choices per se. But I do definitely, a lot of talk too, I'm concerned about hardscape.
I do have a question about that.
Yeah, so one of the issues too is that we are putting in so much parking lot, so much building.
And a lot of that water goes directly into the storage or the stormwater, which goes directly into the stream in a couple different areas there. So that might be worth having a discussion. I mean, we're not really focused on that because everything's drought. We're just not planning on getting water, but at some point we will. Things will change, and I worry about water quality from parking lots, asphalt, things like that. That's something to put. If possible, I think having a more of a conservation area, if those lots don't happen, that would be a really great thing. That would be breathing room for the stream in that area. That'd also be open space, green space, especially where the stream naturally feeds plants. It's nice to be able to have that green, like real green, rather than just grass or whatever. So those are kind of my thoughts. I hope we definitely, just like we did with Jack Barrett, need to put pressure on them to understand how important it is. And I've been really happy with the council and the mayor. I think you guys have really stressed how important that little gem is and how we could ruin that really quickly. So those are my thoughts. These are just things to, as this process goes forward, that we'll discuss. And I've had a couple other experts come in that have looked at the stream, and once again, they've all said this is an interface area that has extreme potential, and you really can't put a price on it. These cold water habitats are diminished along the Wasatch Front to a huge degree. So that's something to consider. Thank you.
Anyone online, John?
Nope.
I see no one here wants to make a further comment, so we'll move on to council or staff comments. Council, do you have any additional comments this evening? Councilman Barker?
This kind of goes in correlation with our fireworks discussion. I was going to mention it. We need to have a discussion as we get closer to fireworks about not just the hazards of fireworks, but how much water we want to dedicate to fireworks. Because I've been talking with Dave and Jason Rainey, our water guys. Wildfire can drain our tanks real fast. And right now it takes 24 hours to recharge one of them. If that's, no one takes any water after. And our residents still want their water. So that as we move closer to fireworks, it's going to be how much do we actually want to dedicate water towards fire. That's something to think about as we get better.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Ekstrom, I saw you had a comment.
Oh, just a real quick one. Just I wanted, now that we've finished all of the budget presentations, just to thank all of the department heads and all of us for the effort put in. I think they were really well done, and I really appreciate everything that went into them, and just how much you all dedicate to your running of your departments and doing such a good job. And just again, thank you.
Okay. Councilman Lopez, anything?
No comment.
No comment. Councilman Swanson? No comments. Katie or John, do you have any comments, or Chief, Tiffany, Scott? Scott has one, looks like.
We got some light reading.
The Property Rights Ombudsman's Office received state funding for training, and as part of that, they've gone through and they've sent copies of this local land use regulation book to all of our elected officials, planning commission members. We don't have a board of adjustment, but we do have a hearing officer. So here are your copies of your light reading of all things.
When is the reading? When is the reading due?
It's a book report in 2 weeks.
Oh, book report in 2 weeks.
Hey, John, can you get these autographed?
I can get them autographed if you'd like. I'll autograph them if you want.
This is written by Craig
learned
M.
to-
Wow.
Call.
So,
This is John's dad.
yeah, and I believe, if I remember right, I think these are printed at cost. I think that's what was part of the grant. I don't believe he got compensated for these, just so it's clear that he's not getting paid for by the
Royalties.
state.
He probably should. Time is money, they say.
Well, and he did his first version of this 20 years ago, so it was time for a new one.
Perfect. Katie, do you have anything?
I do not, thank you.
All right. Council, my challenge would be to you as we come back to the work session, that you come back with solutions to the hurdles in your budget, that you come prepared. John? You have something else? You're down there kind of waving.
I forgot to mention something. Sorry, I interrupted you though.
That's okay. Go ahead, John.
We are doing a budget hearing at 5 PM on the 10th of May. Where we'll have department heads and hopefully as many of you who can be here to answer questions and discuss the budget with residents in a more casual format.
Hearing or open house?
It's just an open house, and then the hearing will be during the council meeting.
So you can see we've got to make a decision on revenues, any expense adjustments. So if you would come prepared in our next week's meeting with solutions to the shortfalls and suggestions, I think, the chief made some thoughts for us to consider. I think our meeting will go a lot smoother. So with that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Councilmember Ekstrom.
Second.
Second. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.